We have to wait 5 minutes, Madam Clerk? 2? You truncated that. Usually it's 5. Didn't know you had that kind of latitude, huh? You can make it 0. Is that right? Yeah, well passed, well passed. All right, we'll wait 2 minutes and then we'll get back to item 9.2. It felt like 2 minutes to me. Item 9.2, Appendix A, report, public bike share transit contract update, legal advice. Mover and a seconder on that report, as originally indicated, Councillor Clark, to receive that report and maintain it in maintain confidentiality of that report as well. Moved by Clark, seconded by Member Farr. Thank you. Any comments or questions? If not, all in favor? Electronic vote this time. Those that can, you have through back to the open session.
I'm disconnected.
Okay, so you're indicating
okay
in favor. Thank you, Councillor Partridge. You're waving. You want to speak?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just confirm? I thought, and I can't say what happened in camera, but are we just voting to receive this report, not on the recommendations?
We are voting on the direction that was given in camera and that it be maintained confidential.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
what we're voting on.
I'm opposed to that.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
I'm trying to hit the speaker. I think what Uber did is completely despicable and we shouldn't be doing business. That's how I feel. I just want to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to the vote now. So all in favor of that direction, please indicate, and those that are opposed indicate as well. Councillor Marula was thumbs up. Councillor Wilson was in favor. Did you vote, Councillor?
The direction that was given in camera, sir?
Correct. Yep.
Sorry.
Did we vote on that? Nope. In favor or opposed?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just voted.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. And we'll go to item 9.3, with administrative penalty system online payment.
Hey,
what? What, hey?
The vote didn't come up and I am opposed to it. I just wanted
the vote came up and you were indicated as opposed. I saw it on the screen.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm saying it didn't come up on my computer. But
okay.
Thank you for capturing
it did come up and there were 15 in favor and, sorry? And you were marked opposed. All right, thank you. On item 9.3, administrative penalty system online payment. Councillor Collins, on that topic?
No, I thought we were still in the 7s. Are we not dealing with the motion tonight, the notice of motion that was put?
We are. We're getting to that though.
Okay.
We're coming to it. So we're on the administrative penalty system online payment. Did we vote on that? No, we didn't. So a mover and a seconder on that. Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Thank you. All in favor or opposed? Online e-vote or e-vote online. Count Marula is in favor. Thumbs up. Anyone else need to do the thumbs up? Councillor Partridge, thank you. Prominent looking thumb there. Okay. That's carried as well unanimously. Thank you. Okay, I have got item 5.4F, which is the public report on bike share transit contract update. A mover and a seconder for that item, and of course that, I mean, it is also the appropriate place to discuss the report. So if you have questions on the report itself, feel to ask them. Ultimately, we're going to get to a motion regarding it's item 7.2. So on the report itself, any comments on the report? Councillor Nat, go ahead.
Indicate that, thank you. I just want to indicate that the eScribe system isn't accepting requests right now.
Okay, I'll take it by hand motion. So for those that want to speak, just indicate and I'll get you on the list. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you,
Ferguson.
Mr. Mayor, to staff, in the report, there are a number of items that I just wanted to seek some clarification in the public session. One was around the impacts of the shutdown. Sorry, it's getting late in the hour. I'm losing my steam along with many of my other colleagues. So there was mention in the report to several different funds that have been assumed to either operate or used for the capital of SOBI. So I just wanted clarity on the OMCC funds. There's currently in the report, it speaks to the fact that the council had previously approved an application to OMCC that resulted in a 1.3, I believe, sorry, it's just taking me a moment to get to the right spot on the page, $1.3 million public bike share transit enhancement program, which needs to be completed by 2020. And of that, 80% is provincial funds and 20% of it is city funds. So there's been some city dollars that have gone into enhancing our bike share transit system. Is there any sense from staff about the implications of the decision to terminate the SOBI program by the current operator, what that would mean in terms of those funds that the city has received?
Okay, I'm not sure who we're going to.
So-
Brian Hollingsworth or Jason?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I was going to ask, Brian has reached out to the province to see if we can get some information on that. I'm not sure if we have a response yet. The way the program is structured is that if a project does not go forward, that the funds can be redistributed to another project that's also within the approved OMCC projects. But we were seeking clarity from the province as to whether or not there was any concerns with that in light of the fact that the bike share program may not proceed. So I don't know if Brian has heard anything back from the province yet.
Yeah, that's correct, Jason. We did reach out, and as you explained, funds could need to be repaid if the project isn't completed. The bike share project itself includes a number of components. We have not heard back from the province definitively how this current situation will affect that funding.
Thank you. And then similarly through you, Mayor, to staff, there is reference to the Everybody Rides initiative and the current grants and previous grants that they've received. So this is Canada's first bike share equity program that enables residents across Hamilton to use the facility in the program of SOBI at a subsidized rate. So it supports those residents who are in financial need, newcomers, and those who cannot currently use the two-wheeled bikes in the system and require the use of adaptive bikes. Has there been any consultation or conversation with Everyone Rides initiative in terms of how their operations would be impacted if with the termination by this current operator?
Brian or Jason?
I'll take that one, Jason, if you want. There's been very little conversation as yet, but there's a number of people that rely on that program. I think it's some 500 kind of formal memberships plus a whole lot of other people that receive benefits through that program. So the impacts, as I understand it, if there's not an operational bike share, then those people wouldn't receive those benefits.
They wouldn't receive those benefits and then wouldn't be able to ride the bikes. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, the reference to the 500 ERI individual memberships also references the fact that there's 10 social service organizations who provide access to their clients to this transportation system in the city. Is that correct? Do we have a sense of what kind of clients, what kind of programs?
Yeah, that is correct. There's 10 social service organizations of a variety of type. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think there's some oriented towards youth, persons with other financial challenges, etc.
Thank you. And in terms of the review of the system shutdown and storage, which we dealt with in camera, I just wanted to get a sense of from staff if there is anything that can be shared in public in terms of the differentiation between the cost to operate versus the cost to store. And if that is not an appropriate question in public, I'm happy to get clarity from clerks on that one.
I think it's fine. Right?
Yeah, I'll offer it to Jason as well. But you know, we are working out some costs under different scenarios. The cost to shut down the system and store the system is certainly not trivial. It's labor intensive, as well as requires some fees for storing and renting a storage facility for the bicycle. The costs you know, to remove the stations, if that's the desire and the direction, is another cost, but they're non-trivial. And you know, they do contrast with the cost of maintaining and operating the system, which is, I believe in the report, is around $65,000 per month.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, to staff, it says here in the report that it's the staff's opinion that the only viable option to maintain continuity of service would be, given the extreme short notice by the current provider, would be to contract with either the previous nonprofit operator of the bike share program. Could staff comment on that opinion?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Did I hear Jason? No. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is option. That operator, Hamilton Bike Share Inc., operated the system between 2015 and 2019, so they're familiar with the system. They also operate the Everyone Rides program, so they do have some infrastructure and capacity to probably do the quickest takeover of an operational system.
Thank you. And then finally, in the report, there's a reference to an indication that there, and I can apologize, I just have to get the paperwork in front of me, on page 3 of 6, in terms of the long-term operations, that since Uber's announcement of its intent to cease operations, we've had other operators have expressed interest. Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we get staff to comment on shedding a little light on what that looks like and the viability of some of those operators that are expressing interest?
Jason, I heard you mention that earlier. Want to speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, they are just early indications of people who've reached out and said that they may be interested in a longer term operation. It is a mix of what I would categorize as more sort of community organizations who may want to participate in a program, as well as operators of similar systems in other cities who would be more private companies who do this type of program in other cities.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, what would it take to get clarity about making sure that we have a long-term operator that's actually a viable player to maintain and operate our SOBI program? Can somebody shed light on the procurement process and how often or how long that takes, and what would be entailed to pursue some of the long-term operations points that are raised in the report?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what we suggested in the report is if council wants to go through a process of doing a competitive process to see if there actually is an operator who would take on the program over the long term, We estimate that would take approximately 6 months to do to prepare some sort of offering with some terms and conditions to put it out there to receive proposals and to evaluate those proposals.
Okay, so if we were to pursue a viable third-party option to operate SOBI, staff are requiring a lead-up time of about 6 months in order to fulfill that procurement process.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, to identify an operator who would be a multi-year operator, a longer-term operator, we'd estimate to take about 6 months.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, what are the direct impacts right now of this operation being ceased by the current operator on June 1st? What is the impact to our community and to our service users?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, if I understand the question correctly, if the program doesn't continue, then it would be a service that would not be available to the current users or any future users.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillors Ferguson, Whitehead, Danko, Clark. Councillor Ferguson.
And my other question, you took a motion on the report. Is that just a motion to receive?
Correct.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
How many of those social agencies are offering rideshare programs to the kids on the mountain? Or to the rest of the city? Is that already concentrated for kids that live downtown?
This is not a kids program, by the way.
No, this is I think one of the questions was asked is in the report on some of the social agencies that are providing some opportunities for I guess kids that can affordability issues. So I'm asking now, geographically, what kids are getting this advantage, and how are the kids on the mountain being treated?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure. I don't have the list of which those social organizations are and what the programs are they do fully under the Everyone Rides initiative and what their catchment areas are. So we could research that information, but I don't have that with me right now.
Thank you. The other question I was going to ask is, in the report, it doesn't talk about, and there's been discussions that it's, we can bring it to Ward 4, we can bring it to Ward 5 and whatever. Well, I want to make it clear that on the inception of the program, which I supported, we had asked for the program to go on the mountain. We even identified things like Mohawk College and concession, and then we they pulled it out. And what we were told, there's no business case. You need density. So clearly this is not a public policy program. And I'm not sure why we're involved in a program that can never expand beyond a very high dense area. So help me understand how this is good public policy to provide taxpayers money in any way, to continue a program, or is this best fit with the private sector?
Jason?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if this answers the councillor's question or not. We do identify in the report the preparation of the business plan that the councillor had been referring to. That hasn't been undertaken yet, and it would be on hold given the uncertainty around the program. There was a small expansion approved through the provincial grants. The OMCC grant included a small expansion. I can tell you that the business case issue is around the operating costs of a broader system and a system that would have stations that would be more further spread apart, and the cost of balancing those stations and moving the bikes around. That's what's been the barrier from a business case standpoint, which was what the business plan was intended to look at. And there were a number of identified areas to look at the viability of them.
So I want to reiterate for my colleagues that from day one, when this was initiated, and I thought it was a great idea to get into it because I want to provide those, that level of service. Never believed that it was, we provide the infrastructure, the private sector provides the service. We heard 26,000 rides. That's the other part of the business case. I don't see it contained in this report, but I received an email. And when everyone throws out numbers, there was 17,000 members, there was 36,000 members, there's 26. I'm not even sure what the numbers are anymore. They're all false until I actually see a number on a piece of paper that's accurate. But my understanding is not measured by the amount of people that sign and pay one day a fee 2 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Was measured by his trips. Is that correct? The business case is based on how many trips per person per day. And if they don't hit a certain threshold, there's no business case. So the business case is on how many people, it's actually on how many trips. Is that correct? And it averages out,
Right.
I think,
Right.
11,
Yeah.
4 trips per person.
Ryan?
a day.
Yeah, through the chair, the figure of 26,000 is the number of active users, which is comprised of a variety of different types of members. So there's the monthly, there's the pay as you go, and then there's a few on an older annual program. So that's where the 26,000 members comes from. The business case would consider both members, trips, and other factors.
Yeah, well, actually, I've talked to somebody in the industry, and they're telling me that you're pretty well looking at 4 trips per day per person. You're not getting that. That's why there's not a business case. That's why Uber's leaving. That's why it's being transferred. So my last question is the original operator, that probably the best guy, people to come and operate it. Why did they leave in the first place? And why would they come back?
Yeah, the original operator was Social Bicycles Inc., who contracted to HBSI. There was a number of changes in the relationships between operators, so I don't think anyone left. It was just things evolved.
Okay, but the local group, did you say that were actually doing the operator, at least contracted to provide the service? They're still here, correct?
That's correct.
But they never took over, or they never put a bid, or they never asked to take over to operate. Why didn't this have a natural sequence to that? I'm trying to understand, because there's a talk about maybe bringing them in, but they would have came in, or they had an opportunity to come in a lot earlier, and they chose not to.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know that they deliberately chose not to. There was an operations contract between the city and the operator, and the services were provided to the city for the operation. So I don't think anyone walked away at that time.
Councilor White.
No. Okay, so I'm a bit confused, because I mean, in the report you're identifying, I think I heard the councillors speak previously that there might be a natural, and I'm trying to think, well, yeah, of course I would think there would be a natural, but the problem is, one, do they have the financial wherewithal? So do they have the financial for liability risk? How you do the due diligence? Have we ever done the due diligence on this group?
Yeah, certainly, we know the group well. Just seeing a message from Peter, who has a little bit more history on this, and he does report that HBSI, or Hamilton Bike Sharing, didn't back out. Uber decided to use a different model and operate the system themselves.
Yeah, no, I understand the more recent events, but we've had 5 years of operation. Uber just came in the last year. My understanding, the last 4 years, this local group has been the contracted deliver of the program, right?
That's correct. Through 2015 to 2019.
So they had no opportunity in those 4 years, as we see, 3 different owners to actually operate?
No, because the contract was with the predecessors of Uber.
No, but that's my point. How did all these interlopers get in and took over the operation if there was a real serious interest in the local group to run it?
Because they didn't have an opportunity.
Because they didn't have the money, right?
I would say because they didn't have an opportunity.
They couldn't bid on purchasing the outright operation.
They didn't have control of the contract.
You don't need to. Neither did the other two. Uber didn't have the control of the contract either. They bid on it.
Okay.
They paid the price for it. That's how business works. Correct?
I think he's answered your question. So
No, he
they
didn't
didn't have an opportunity.
But no, well, hang on. I'm not satisfied with that question unless it's explained, because we have 3 different operators. They got control somehow. They weren't on the inside like this local group. Normally, business is a money transaction. Normally, If it's not, then provide clarity. But without that clarity, then I guess what I'm suggesting is this group had every opportunity to put their money where their mouth is and put the bid in at that time.
Yeah, so there was a transparent process back in, I believe, 2014, 2015. And anyone could have bid on that process or offered their services for that process. And the operations went to Social Bikes Inc., which is now Uber. And you know that was our operator. That is still our operator till June 1st.
Yeah, my understanding, you also, Sobe didn't sell their interest to Uber?
There was a number of transactions, and yes, I think that the original group and the intellect that went with that went through some transformations.
So Sobe was an independent operator, and then they became associated with Uber through a sale of this contract.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so this contract was up for bids within the private sector.
In 2015, there was a request for proposals.
No, I'm talking about the arrangement, because once we lost control through the request for proposals, it went through to the private sector. So now you got Sobe that's got control. Sobe says, hey, I'm gonna make some money out of this. Uber's got some interest. Bang, I sell my interest to Uber. Sobe walks off with a nice little pocket of change. But if Sobe was looking for a purchaser, that means anyone could have bid on it, right? They would have opened it up to the private sector to buy out their contract. Isn't that how business is done?
Okay, I'm not sure what you're trying to get at. So why don't you just spit out what you're trying to get at?
What I'm getting at, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, get at
is
it.
that if an organization, God bless them, has a financial wherewithal to make this a success, so because I think I'm sort of hearing this, then I would have thought and hoped that they would have bid on and purchased this operation so they can continue operating. By the sounds of it, they didn't have the financial wherewithal and they couldn't put the bid in. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Danko. We need to get you unmuted. There we
There
go.
we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to Director Hollingsworth, on page 5 of the report, there's reference to the public bike share service area and escarpment neighborhoods business plan. So through you to Directors Hollingsworth, this was a plan that was officially approved by this term of council in 2019 and was intended to be undertaken in 2020.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Whitehead, you're not talking right now, so you're
Point of
not talking
clarification.
right now. You're not.
Well,
He's asking Brian Hollingsworth a question, not you. Brian, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Danko. That is a plan that was approved by council. It was discussed at council, and you know we fully intended to go through with that expansion plan.
Thank
So
you.
in terms of Ward 8 in particular, I noticed that it's the main transit hub in Ward 8 where I could see Sobe use really expanding is at Mohawk College. And that is specifically spelled out that neighborhoods connecting to Mohawk College, the campus itself, St. Joseph's campus, and the line up with the Claremont Access construction, which would be the J. Keddy Trail. So those are specific goals to bring Sobe to the mountain, to Ward 8 in particular.
Brian?
That's correct, as listed in the report, and I believe as discussed previously with council.
And these nodes that are listed here, other ones include Lime Ridge Mall and surrounding neighborhoods in Ward 7 in Councillor Paul's area, Concession Street in particular, which borders on Ward 8, and Mountain Drive Park. We would also service Sam Lawrence Park. There's Valley Park is mentioned here in Councillor Clark's area. Downtown Dundas, of course, which is an expansion into a little bit further on the west end through Councillor Vanderbeek's area, and all the way to the Confederation GO Station and Confederation Park. So all of that is the official plan for expanding, social bicycle service to those areas beyond the existing boundaries. That was officially endorsed by this term of council.
those were the areas that we were directed and also suggested to look at.
And is there any particular reason why those areas were selected for official expansion of the SOBI program? What makes those desirable to have a social bicycles node there?
It included a number of considerations, including activity hubs such as post-secondary institutions, obviously the distribution of population and employment, and just the general intent to increase the coverage of the system.
And if I remember correctly, back to this discussion, a part of it was when we were talking about expanding SOBI was to focus on those areas where it would get the most use. So in terms of the answer that you just said, these hubs in particular were identified as areas where we would be able to grow ridership and where it would get the most use in order to position it to be successful. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Just the same as happened in Toronto and other jurisdictions.
Thank you. On page 6, there are some statistics of the total user information for SOBI. So it lists that there's currently 26,500 active users and 600 have signed up just since the beginning of the pandemic. So is that just since March?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is new users since March, and it fluctuates by the day.
Thank you. And I guess the premise there would be that these are users that are signing up because, as Councillor Nan has mentioned, it's transit is seen as a bit more of a risky option, and hopping on a bicycle is easy and convenient. So these are people that are specifically looking to active transportation in a pandemic as their preferred choice of transportation. Is that, we're assuming those 600 new signups are part of the motivation there?
Yeah, through the chair, to be honest, we don't survey people as to why they're signing up, but we do see, for example, lineups outside of bicycle shops with people trying to get their hands on a coveted bicycle. So some of them might be people that couldn't afford or couldn't get a bicycle.
And in the total number of trips and riders, so it says from 2015 to present, riders have taken over 1.6 million trips and have traveled over 2.9 million kilometers. So in your sense of comparative bicycle share programs, what's your sense of the success of SOBI versus some of the other ones based on those statistics?
I'd say we have a pretty good user rate. It's well used. I can't get into stats of how we compare on a per capita basis with most other systems, but generally, historically, our system's seen as pretty good.
I would venture to say it's seen as more than pretty good. I'd say it's seen as one of the top systems in a mid-sized city anywhere in the world, with 2.9 million kilometers traveled. It's a tremendous success story. Mr. Mayor, through you, I guess actually this is a question for you. We have 8 delegations that submitted written correspondence on SOBI. Would now be the appropriate time to speak to some of those written delegations?
It would. Yep.
So I'm going to go to just the delegation that was submitted by Kate Flynn, who is the acting director of the Center for Climate Change and Management at Mohawk College. It's really unfortunate that we don't have these delegates in chambers to be able to speak to this themselves. So I'm not going to do Kate, justice to what she would have been able to present herself. And unfortunately, she's not going to be able to answer questions, which is, again, it's too bad that we have to go through it this way. But I'm just going to speak a little bit to what I read in the letter that she submitted. So, I mean, she talks about the importance of the SOBI program to our climate change goals, but then she also talks about the fact that 49% of SOBI members reported using their cars less, and 40% of SOBI users use the service to commute to work, and an additional 24% use it to run errands. So in my reading of that, I mean, it's clear that SOBI is a critical multimodal transportation system for our city. And then she also adds what I thought was a really interesting personal anecdote here about how she uses SOBI personally. And I'd say that there's probably many students at Mohawk College and also other people on the mountain that use SOBI in a similar way. So the story that she presents is that as SOBI as a multimodal part of her transportation choice as a multimodal system. So she works at the Mohawk College Fennel campus and she lives in Dundas. So in order to commute using SOBI as part of her daily routine, she rides the bike between the SOBI bike between Dundas and downtown, and then transfers to a different mode of transportation and takes the HSR up to the Fennel campus at Mohawk. And I think for me anyway, that really highlights the importance of SOBI as a multimodal transportation option that services the entire city in one way or another. So I just wanted to put that on the record and highlight, you know, this letter in particular, because she's not able to be here to do that herself. So those are all my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can anyone advise me what the initial investment was in SOBI when Metrolinx first funded it all those years ago?
Through the chair, I think it was $1.6 million.
So that was the first investment.
Sorry, that was to purchase the
Capital costs, yeah.
Capital cost was 1.6 million. And so then in 2017, the city of Hamilton agreed to an 80-20 split on a $1.3 million public bike share transit enhancement program. Is that also through Metrolinx or a different fund?
Right.
That's through a different fund. It's called the Ontario Municipal Commuter Cycling Program, or OMCC, and it was a provincial program.
It was a provincial program, and the city would be the ones that, so that investment of the $1.3 million, and it talks about 65 new stations and signs. It talks about a bunch of additional bikes, upgrade screens, keypads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Was it the city of Hamilton that was to administer that grant and make sure the money was spent on these bikes?
Right.
Yes, through the chair, we received the funding, just the same as there was a number of projects under OMCC. We received the funding, we deliver the project and collect the funding.
Sorry, OMCC, Brian, long form, please.
Sorry, OMCC is Ontario Municipal Commuter Cycling Program.
Thank you.
I think I got that.
They all
I also, Mr. Mayor, at the appropriate time, I think I made a mistake on terminology in terms of HBSI versus social bicycling. So I may need to correct something I said.
Okay.
We'll forgive you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Did you want to correct it now, Brian?
Yeah, it's just that essentially the two terms sound very similar. Hamilton Bike Share Inc. is the local nonprofit. You know, it could literally be Joe's operating company versus Social Bicycles Inc., which is the more legal entity, which has the relationship with Uber.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
So there was an investment of $1.3 million. The report indicates 575,000 of the OMCC funds have been expended. It indicates that a number of a lot of the work is in progress and due to be completed by August of 2020. So does that mean that all of those vendors that were involved have already been paid?
Right.
Through the chair, I'll just walk you through the $1.3 million. So that was the original amount that was estimated and part of the original OMCC, or the Ontario Municipal Cycling Program application. That was an estimate at the time, with actually coming a little bit under budget on some of the programs. So, all in, it's around $900,000, of which $575,000 has been spent or committed.
Thank you. And spent or committed. So are there vendors who are in the middle of doing work, and now that this has been canceled, the work won't be completed and they won't be paid?
The refurbishment of the bicycle stations is one area of work that is still in progress, where they're taking out the rack, painting them and refurbishing them. So that is in progress.
Okay, so we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we're doing to another vendor what Uber is doing to us, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
The 361,000 that is committed but not spent, what was that committed for?
The majority of that is for the controllers. So the little computers on the bicycles, which allow people to put in a password and unlock the bike and use it.
And that's the component of the application that would be modernizing the bicycle fleet.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. If I can speak to the $150,000 worth of expansion service that is not implemented yet. This would be on page 5 of 6 of the report. It shows that in 2019, we approved $150,000 to enhance the bike transit service in neighborhoods connecting Moore College, Limeridge Mall, Concession Street, Valley Park, Waterdown, Ancaster, Stony Creek, Dundas, Confederation, Royal Botanical Gardens, even the city of Burlington in partnership with the city. So that $150,000, we have not implemented that as of yet. When was that going to be implemented?
Right.
Through the chair, that $150,000 is for the bike share business plan, which would have looked at the viability and exact geographies of those expansions. That wouldn't have funded the expansion itself to those broader areas such as Waterdown.
So this was the consultant's report that would advise us where it would make sense to do this based on a good business plan. Is that a fair statement?
That's a good generalization, yes.
Thank you. With regards to not even sure what ERI stands for. It's in my notes here. It's a $700,000 Trillium grant. Everyone Rides Initiative, I think was what it was called. Do we have, who was the actual applicant for that grant? The city?
Right.
Through the chair, Jason, you might know the answer better, but I don't believe it was the city. I think it was a separate grant application.
Jason Thorne, do you have a?
And ERI is Everyone Rides Inc. Or sorry, Everyone Rides Initiative.
Through the chair, that's correct. So that's not a city agreement. We just put it in there as information for council as a program that is tied to the bike share, but is a program between the not-for-profit group, the Hamilton Bike Share Inc., and the funding they received was from the Trillium Foundation.
So HBSI got a grant of $700,000 from Trillium to provide, in essence, subsidized bikes available to everyone. I'm being generic in terms of using their own language, but that was the gist of the program, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's various components to it. Yes, there is some free memberships to some users. There are some discounted memberships. There are some partnerships with some social service agencies. I think there's some cycling training and education in there as well. I don't know all of the details, but it's those different elements.
The transition to electric bikes that I heard council obligated themselves to. Can someone enlighten me on that?
Yes, through the chair. That was a report back, it was April 2019, where we were looking to extend the contract with the current operator. At that time, they were offering to bring in new bikes and electrically powered bikes. And, council didn't approve any monies for those bikes. It was just part of the extension or the addendum to the contract. But obviously those bikes did not arrive. Council didn't direct staff to go purchase electric bikes or anything like that.
So are we obligated to fulfill that addendum to the contract?
We're not obligated to fulfill anything with respect to bringing in electric bikes, either through provincial funding or anything.
Okay, so that's a misnomer. That's irrelevant at the moment then. The storage of the bikes by themselves, I've been told that is roughly $130,000. So that's just the storage of the bikes up front. Nothing else, correct?
Through the chair, that's an estimate of the annual cost for storage for the bikes, for potentially some racks, which are not in appropriate locations for other bike parking, as well as any other peripherals that we might need to store as a result of the shutdown of the operation.
Two last questions, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry for taking up so much time. I'm making it as fast as I can. Hamilton Bike Share Inc., did they secure funds from the sale of the contract to Uber?
Yeah, that's the one I think I misspoke on using the wrong term. No, Hamilton Bike Share Inc., the local nonprofit, did not secure funds from Uber.
So Uber took over the contract but didn't pay anyone for the contract?
It was Social Bicycles Incorporated. As I mentioned, the two sound the same, but they're very different.
Okay, so it was the other organization, Social Bicycles Incorporated, SOBI, that got paid a whack of money.
Correct, and they were a North America wide entity.
Okay, and so when I'm looking at the total investments that we've had in this bike program so far, I'm seeing 1.3 million, 900,000, another 150,000, and then the Trillium grant of 700,000. That's the total investment of everything that's gone into this program since its inception. Is that correct?
I think you summarized it correctly, but that's not the total city. That's the total public investment, not the city investment.
Care to enlighten me on what the total city investment has been? I mean, Mr. Mayor, we really should have all of these numbers.
Brian, do you have that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to do the math in my head. It's not a lot because Metrolinx paid for the original bicycles. The OMCC program, we're paying 20%. Province is paying 80%. So it's, I think, 20% of 1.3 million.
Okay, so we're in and around 2.4, 2.5 million all in, excluding the Trillium grant of 700,000. Does that make sense?
No, the Trillium grant isn't city money, I don't believe. So
That's what I said, excluding the Trillium. So
okay.
there was $1.3 million initially, 900,000, and then the 150.
Yeah, but the 1.3 million was
Metrolinx.
the 1.6 million original was Metrolinx. The 1.3 current OMCC grant, the city only pays 20% contribution towards that. So
Okay.
whatever
Okay.
whatever 20% of 1.3 is, 400 odd thousand.
And so then the downside to putting the bikes in storage right now for the 130,000 to sort out our legal situation with Uber is that we're taking a number of bikes off the road that people would be utilizing if they had the opportunity to.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson. And then we've got Councillor Jackson, Paul, and Whitehead a second time. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We began this long day talking about reopening, and I think our motto, our principle of we should do no harm. We should be cautious. We should think of the most vulnerable, and we need to be data-driven to ensure that as we go down this precarious path, we know what we're doing. We don't do any harm. And we've also spent a lot of time talking about the relationship between trying to do no harm as we reopen and economic recovery, and the tension between those two. And we've spoken about economic recovery before. And so on that basis, I'd like to go have a few questions with respect to the report and some of the impacts that are stated and not. So if I can get clarity on them. To Mr. Thorne. You've probably done more reading on this than I have, but I've certainly done enough. What's not stated in the report is a discussion about the economic benefits that come from bike share systems to the cities that host them. Could you speak to that from your experience in your reading, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure I have anything in terms of the broader economic impacts. It is certainly part of the transportation system, which is essential to the economy of a city, but I don't have anything specific in terms of the economic impacts of bike share specifically.
Well, I do, and there is plenty of scholarly work and practical work that has evidence that bike share systems do have a positive impact on business activity due to increased accessibility within local neighborhoods. And also it's good for business in that it makes work commutes more efficient and the urban economies more productive, which I think are probably very good things that we need, particularly today and moving forward. I also have some questions about some of the things in Dr. Richardson's report, which we all spoke glowingly of and appreciated her counsel. She talked about in Hamilton Reopens that we're going to have to do some things differently, maybe for a short term, but maybe forever. And those were included how we get around our city. And I think the numbers that the report speaks to of 600 new users since March is probably our citizens are ahead of us on this. They're telling us they are getting around in a different way. And I guess my question is, what will be the impact if people don't have access potentially to those different ways of commuting, those one-way commutes or two-way commutes? Mr. Thorne, could you help me on that through you, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So the comments or the observations that were made in the presentations this morning were related to the expected shifts in how people are moving around cities. And I say cities because this is not just a Hamilton issue. And the expectation is that for some period of time, capacities or ridership on transit will decline, whether that's because there's capacity restrictions or physical distance restrictions or just a personal choice. And that some of those transit trips may just disappear, that there will be people that are not commuting or traveling because businesses are still closed or schools are still closed. Some of those trips would be expected to divert to other modes. And what most cities are looking at is an expectation that some of those trips will shift to vehicles and some of those shifts will shift to walking and cycling. And that's kind of the big shift that cities are preparing for right now, is what happens with some of those those trips that used to be taken by transit that still need to be taken. Not all of them will still need to be taken, but those that do, where will those trips shift to? Will they shift to vehicles? Will they shift to walking and cycling?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's helpful. So if they do shift to other modes of transport, then those will have an impact on the very areas where we have a relationship, a dense relationship between work, uh, work and play, or living and playing. So is it safe to assume that if perhaps someone doesn't have access to a bike share program or a bike that, and they're wary about taking transit, would they have to opt for taking their vehicle? And that will impact our neighborhoods that are perhaps in the downtown? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so I would say certainly if there are a significant share of those trips continue to happen and shift to vehicles, then that would, yes, it would certainly have the expected impacts on traffic in the city, on parking pressures, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. My next question to Mr. Thorne, through you, Mr. Mayor, could you speak to me a little bit about the downtown secondary plan and what that set out for the downtown and almost a growing area in terms of parking and density, and how that differs from the rest of the city?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, so the downtown secondary plan did a few things. With respect to density, it did significantly increase the as of right density permissions in the downtown core, capping out at about 30 stories in height. It also looked at reduced parking requirements. So there's a range of parking requirements depending on the size of units and the size of the project. But generally speaking, it took the minimum parking requirements and reduced them. And then it also includes some policies related to form of development that speak to development that is pedestrian friendly, transit friendly, and creates a mix of uses within the downtown core.
That's very helpful. Thank you. This municipality has said to a part of our city that we are going to, when a development occurs, a redevelopment or a new development occurs, we're going to enable that development to have less parking than anywhere else in the city. And we're going to enable that development to have more density than anywhere else in the city. And in return, it's our understanding that because of that, we are obliged, we should be, to provide the kind of social and physical infrastructure that will reflect that we don't have as much parking. So to answer to the question of why should I pay for it, a social bike share program, why should my residents pay for it because they don't use it? I would suggest that if your ward or your neighborhood is willing to forego those kinds of parking requirements or to ease those parking requirements and to allow that kind of density, then they would be probably a good candidate for a bike share. There is one letter I would like to go to again. I regret that the delegates cannot be here and we can't ask them questions, but there is a letter 5.2A1 from a Rebecca Jackson Gravely. And I'm going to just open it up here for a minute. I think I recall she is an employee with the Hamilton Health Science Corporation. And she is chairs one of the corporation's Smart Commutes Committee. And in the letter, she's telling us that the committee is a steadfast supporter of the bike program in Hamilton because it enables employees and patients and students and visitors to use the service. And in so doing, it frees up some of the parking available for those who, for reasons of mobility, or they're sick, or they're just not able to cycle. It frees up that parking space for them. And I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to that letter because it seems to tick off both the environmental benefit boxes because she references reducing air pollution in the city and thereby improving or reducing the health impact of air pollution. And she also seems to speak to it about the benefits for the employees who use it to get around and those who may be visiting SOBI. So that was a very interesting letter. If you were, if any members of the public were also interested in reading that. Just going through my notes. I did receive a call, Mr. Mayor, today. I don't know if you did as well. A resident of Ward 1, a woman, she approaching 70. Her physician referred her to the Everyone Rides program. She called herself someone who is living in poverty, and the bicycle through that program has afforded her a great deal of independence. She spoke to me about where she does live in near the Westdale area. When she has gotten on the bus, of course, it is quite crowded with students. So the bike has been great for her health, her mobility. And of course, now with COVID, she's really happy that she has access to that membership through the Everyone Rides program. So there's a great depth and breadth of people who are using it. I think I really appreciated her reaching out and expressing her vulnerability to me and trusting me. And I asked her if I could share her story with you, and she did give me her permission to do so. I also received an email from a Ward 1 constituent who is a he's a healthcare provider, and he's working with patients. And he spoke to me about how valuable the SOBI program has been for him in that at the end of a very long day or when he's riding into the hospital for a shift, it's just that moment of time in the day where it's just for him, and how helpful that bike ride is for him in terms of his mental health, his physical well-being. And so, of course, on our behalf, I thanked him for the service to our community. So those are my comments for now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm not going to get into how I feel about Uber's abandonment of our city. Depends on if anything else is forthcoming this night after this 14-hour marathon we've been in so far. But if it's something else is forthcoming later in the evening, I will get into my strong feelings about Uber. So I only want to say it was because Councillor Danko and Councillor Whitehead both happened to say something, and both were correct in a different way on the mountain. So Councillor Danko on page 5 of this report referenced about the number of potential mountain sites for social bicycles. And Councillor Whitehead had said earlier how it always seemed everything was downtown centric. Councillor Whitehead is absolutely right, and I'm a living, breathing example of that on this matter. In the last term of council, I was so pleased when Mr. Topolovic, our manager of this bike share and bike program, the cycling network program, along with Daryl Bender in our community, called me to say that in my former ward before realignment 18 months ago at Concession and Mountain Park Avenue, which abuts the beautiful 5-acre Mountain Drive Park, that I was going to be the first site for the SOBI bicycles. And I was thrilled because I thought with all the trails, the additional trails that my community and I have successfully lobbied for along Mountain Brow Boulevard, the rail trail, all leading into the Albion Falls area, the East Mountain Trail Loop, all along east-west across the entire mountain. I thought how wonderful, and I was thrilled and I was supportive. And a year or two later, it was yanked out. And it was yanked out. You know why? Supposedly there wasn't enough usage. And I was told, if memory serves me correctly, that it was put instead downtown. So I just had to say that for the record, Mr. Mayor, because I appreciate Councillor Danko on page 5, noting all these potential locations, a lot of them potentially on the mountain. But Councillor Whitehead was absolutely bang on when he said about how we've had the experiments, but it just seems at the end of the day, whatever program has been attempted or experimented on the mountain ended up going downtown. And I'm living, breathing example, a witness to that. That's all I wanted to say at this time. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pauls.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask Jason Thorne. All day we talked about trying to reopen, and all day we heard about cleaning and surfaces, make sure they're clean, and that's why we closed the playground, and that's why we did all these measures. I just want to ask, how are we cleaning these Sobe bikes when there are 900 bikes, 27,000 riders? How do they know they're clean, the seats, the handle? Just because we talked about it this morning, and I just want to make sure, because I got a constituent email me saying, you know, we worried about closing other things, but here's a Sobe bike that 2,700, you know, 2,700 people ride 900 bikes. So how is Uber cleaning them? Or is it up to us now as the city to make sure they're clean?
Jason?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a good question. It is the responsibility of the operator. So it has been the responsibility of Uber as the operator to do the cleaning regime. They did modify their cleaning regime in response to COVID, as many people have done. And so they do the cleaning a couple of times. They do it when they rebalance. So people may not realize that one of the operating costs of the system is to rebalance. So if all of the bikes in the morning, people ride them to one location and leave them there at the end of the day, then a rebalancer comes and redistributes the bikes back, so they're distributed around all of the stations. So they get a cleaning at that point in time. They get a cleaning as they go in for their maintenance, their regular maintenance. And then there is a regular station-wide cleaning of each station that happens as well. So it happens at a few different points in time.
So it just seems, I can't see a person standing in each station and somebody dropping their bike, because I know my son uses it, and you drop it anywhere you want, and just that one cleaning, and then somebody else uses it. So I understand what the question is by my constituent, that we have to be careful. And maybe that's why Uber finds it hard, maybe because of COVID. I don't know. Because HSR, we are
joined the meeting.
We are limited to 10 people. And here we have bike system that has a seat, has handles, and it's for 27,000 members. And if it's I want to vote for it. Yes, let's move on. Let's do it. But I just don't understand, if it's such a successful program, why is there no money in it? If there's 27,000, 7,000 more people at $20 a month, do the math. There's got to be money somewhere. And that's why I'm not sure what I should be doing right now. I don't have all the answers. So Jason, that was my question about the cleaning, because what we heard today was very important, because if we could close the swing sets, the few people go to the park with their children, what about the Sobe bikes?
Thank you. Jason, anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I think you know, that's a public health question. I think we should ask Dr. Richardson next time through. again, most of the facility closures, just so I can follow through on this, have been not to prevent people from touching the facilities, but to prevent people from congregating around them. I think there's a belief that the UV does a pretty good job of sterilizing, facilities, structures, play structures. It was more closed because we want people not to congregate around them and spread disease. So when we're talking about Sobe Bike, I'm not going to speak for the doctor, but I can surmise that it's a single-use vehicle. No congregating is happening as a result of that use. And so I don't think the level of concern is all that high in terms of spread of disease. But let's double check with Dr. Richardson on that, because I'm just paraphrasing what I think she might say. Councillor Pauls, good?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Farr.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, and obviously a lot of users of Sobe, more so during the COVID-19 pandemic than we probably even could have imagined. 600 plus in the last couple of months here, but a lot of them are bringing their own wipes, and every one of them are using what the Premier has described as an essential service. So I'm really wondering, Mr. Mayor, so I'll ask you, it's really a late hour. We're hitting on a whole bunch of things that probably in 20 minutes we're going to hit on all over again, because there's a notice of motion that I think the mover is seeking to waive the rules and make a motion, and it's coming up next. So I'm not certain whether I should offer similar comments, even a few concerns perhaps, just as many other previous speakers have, which maybe strays a bit from what's before us, which is the staff report. So I don't know how many more speakers you have, or if I just do this now. Unfortunately, when Narinder Nayan, the mover of the motion, hopefully coming up next, had all of her questions and comments, I got a call from a doctor, Dougal and a Thornley, finding my mother has broken her hip. So I've been doing that while trying to pay attention to this marathon council meeting. So I'm a little bit spun out right now, but I definitely don't want to miss this issue. And then I want to help my brother this late hour. So I would like to know when we can put this to bed at no cost to the taxpayer, because that's not before us in any way, whether in this report or with the motion to come. And if I need to speak to it, can I speak to it now?
Look, I mean, given the circumstances, I have one additional speaker, Councillor Whitehead, on this report, and then we can move to rise from the committee of the whole and deal with the interim continuation of the Sobe Bike Share program notice of motion. So I'm hopeful that that council will waive the notice provisions and we can deal with that motion. Can't guarantee it, but I'm hopeful that will be. So let me get to Councillor Whitehead, and then hopefully we'll get to the motion. And I agree, and condolences to you and your mother. I mean, you need to look after your mom. Get it? And just recently quit smoking, and it's hot in that room. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of double whammies here. So regrettably. So Councillor Whitehead, could you speak to the issue, or can we get to the next issue, which is really the
I need to clarify a couple of statements that. Again, when you're newly elected, you may not have the background or experience. One, Mr. Mayor, I actually was one of the ones that helped support and initiate the ride share program. Very supportive of it at the start, because I thought we should put at least the infrastructure and let the private sector take over. So one person, the one councillor talked about, well, look, 26,000 riders does this, it does this. Well, I'm going to ask staff this question. If our program is so successful, and is so rich, why is Uber running away from it? Why couldn't they sell it to Lime, which bought all the other bike share programs? So is there what we perceive as success, is it a success from a business case? To staff, to the chair.
Ryan?
Yeah, Jason, feel free to weigh in, but the term rich, I don't believe I used the term rich. It's successful in terms of it provides a mobility option for more people, and a large portion of the population have access to it. We don't have the detailed financial model of the current operator, but it's not by any means a huge moneymaker. It's sort of cost neutral or revenue loss at best. There are ways to make it a more successful system by getting more users, potentially getting advertising. So I don't know whether that answers your question or not.
I just want to make it clear, because it's so people who don't run businesses to suggest for a moment, hey, this is a great program because look what it did, and not having an understanding that the reason why people walked away from it is because there's not a strong business case. If there was, they'd still be here. So that's one point. The second point is, when I was very supportive of this program, I pushed to have it up at Mohawk, and Tom pushed to have it up at Concession. And maybe the Ward 8 council may not know this, but we had it in Ward 8. And they pulled it 1 year. Pulled it out, put it downtown. Imagine how we felt. So the reason why there's a planning in this report is not because Rideshare came and said we need to do this. It's not because Sobeys said we need to do this. It's not because Uber said we had to do this. It's because I pushed again to have an expansion of the Sobeys rideshare program, since the taxpayers made contributions in one way or the other to this program, that there should be, I think the term is equity in regards to how money is distributed. And push for this plan, and that's why that plan's there. So be careful when you suggest, Ward 8 councillor, that it didn't happen, it didn't exist. They put a plan in place.
So now we have a point of order, because you've identified the Ward 8 councillor a number of times, and the point of order, I'm going to turn to Councillor Danko and ask him what the point of order is.
Point of order is Councillor Whitehead referred to me personally, and he said that when you're newly elected, and I quote, when you're newly elected, you may not have the backbone or experience. That is a non-parliamentary reference to myself personally as the Ward 8 councillor, and I demand an apology.
Okay, Councillor Whitehead? No, we don't have you on yet. Go ahead.
I said background, Mr. Mayor, never said backbone. I said you may not have knowledge that this is what.
Regardless, I still want an apology. It's not acceptable.
Well, it's not apology because I didn't say anything unparliamentary. I didn't say backbone. Never said it. Didn't come up.
You said I don't have the experience to do the job that I'm in now, that I was democratically elected to do, just as you were.
Okay, so let's not impugn whether people have knowledge or don't have knowledge. Hang on.
I would love to talk about experience.
Let's not impugn anybody's character or anybody's ability to. We all are equals in terms of decision making. So it doesn't matter whether you have experience or not. Doesn't matter a whit. So finish up, and then let's get to the motion.
So the point, Mr. Mayor, is that it has run in Ward 8 at my pushing, and it was pulled from Ward 8. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. I have no further speakers on this. Let's go to the receiving of this report, an information report, moved by Farr, seconded by Nan. Thank you very much. All in favor or opposed? Councilor Marula, not there at the moment. Did you get him back on
here.
volume? You're there. Okay, I hear you.
I'm only here by voice because my entire computer went down.
Okay.
So I had to actually call. I'm trying to reboot it right now.
Okay.
So,
but I hear you. So you're in favor of receiving that report. Thank
Yes.
you. Anyone else need to indicate? Councillor Pauls, thumbs up in favor of receiving the report?
I actually voted.
Okay. Did vote? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And that's carried. Councillor Collins, can I have a motion to rise from the committee of the whole, please? Go ahead.
Yeah, you may. It's that's the whole Horizon report.
Thank you. All in favor? Again, an electronic vote. Show of hands. All in favor? I saw many hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you.
I'm
Going
in
to go
favor.
to notices of, sorry?
I'm in favor. It's me, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Thanks.
I'm back, I think.
He's back. All right. Item 7.2, notice of motion. Councillor Net. This is the interim continuation of the Sobe Bike Share Program. Councillor Net.
Thank you,
Go.
Mr. Mayor. I need to waive the rules, so moved by myself and seconded by my neighbor in the chamber, Ward 2, Councillor Farr, that the
Thank you.
rules of order be waived to allow for the introduction of motion respecting the interim continuation of Sobe Bike Share.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on it? Hearing not, okay. In favor or opposed? Sam, in favor or opposed?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Thumbs up. Anyone else need to indicate? Councillor Pearson, thumbs up. Councillor Pauls, in favor of waiving the rule? Councillor Whitehead? Yes, thank you. In favor?
Sam,
Okay,
Has left
and
the
that's carried.
meeting.
Sam, I got you. Councillor Nam, to your motion.
Moved by myself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, moved by myself and seconded by my neighbor in the chamber, Ward 2, Councillor Jason. Just want to take a moment to read out the where in the motion and take a moment to speak to the motion, if I may.
Okay.
So, whereas Hamilton's award-winning Sobe Bike Share program is recognized as the most successful bike share system in North America, and whereas Everyone Rides Initiative, Canada's first bike share equity program, provides access to bike share to those who cannot afford it, newcomers, and those who need more support, such as the use of tricycles. Whereas over 26,000 Hamiltonians use Sobe Bike Share program, and whereas 600 new users have signed up to Sobe since COVID-19 pandemic began, up from 300 during the early weeks, and whereas the World Health Organization recommends cycling as a safe mode of travel to maintain safe physical distancing and to encourage physical activity and mental health during this pandemic, whereas the Sobe Bike Share program is a vital part of our transportation network and complements our HSR service, especially while the capacity of buses is limited for physical distancing reasons. Whereas the Sobe Bike Share program plays an essential role in our local economic recovery by enabling workers an affordable option to safely travel to and from work, as well as for residents to run errands or simply enjoy our beautiful city. Whereas Uber unexpectedly announced its intention to unilaterally terminate its agreement with the city to maintain the operations of Sobe effective June 1st, 2020. And whereas the termination of Sobe operations jeopardizes the safe mobility of thousands of Hamiltonians across this city during a health pandemic. And whereas it remains the city's position that Uber has a contractual obligation to operate Sobe until February 2021. But if the city does not act now, the Sobe Bike Share bikes will cease operation effective June 1st, 2020 because of this action by Uber. Therefore, be it resolved that if Uber does not agree to honor its contractual agreement with the city to operate the Sobe Bike Share program until February 2021 without interruption of services at no cost to the city, that 1, Council approve the single source procurement pursuant to procurement policy number 11, non-competitive procurements for the interim operations of the Sobe Bike Share program effective June 1st, 2020, and that the General Manager, Planning and Economic Development Department be authorized to negotiate and enter into and execute an agreement and any ancillary documents required to give effect thereto with Hamilton Bike Share Incorporated, each in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. 2, that the city's contribution to the interim operation of Sobe Bike Share program be limited to providing the existing and near-term committed bikes and stations at no cost to the operator, as well as a financial contribution of up to a maximum of $400,000. And 3, notwithstanding that the area rating special capital reinvestment reserve policy that council permit an exception to this policy, and that funding to maintain the operations of Sobe Bike Share infrastructure be provided as follows. $150,000 from Ward 1 Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve Account 108051, $100,000 from Ward 2 Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve Account 108052, and $150,000 from the Ward 3 Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve 108053 Cycling Project Account 4661717124 dash, the rest is there. And finally, 4, that the city solicitor be authorized and directed to take any necessary actions to pursue recovery of the full amount of the City of Hamilton's costs, expenses, and damages arising from Uber's unilateral decision to cease bike share operations as of June 1st, 2020. And that B, staff be directed to initiate a competitive procurement process with the goal of identifying a preferred long-term operator for the SoBi Bike Share program and report back to council with the results of the procurement process prior to the end of 2020. And I would add a C, approach any private entity interested in offering operational bridge funding at this time. Again, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Farr. And if I may take a moment to speak to the motion.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Imagine for a moment that you're sitting at Tim Hortons Field and every single seat is occupied. Every single one. All 23,218 seats have somebody sitting in them. And that still wouldn't be enough seats to fit every subscriber of Hamilton's SoBi Bike Share program. There'd still be a crowd of 3,000 people standing outside the gates. If we fail to act today, we're leaving every single one of those 26,000 SoBi members without a cost-effective, cost-efficient, safe, and World Health Organization recommended mode of transportation in the middle of a health pandemic, at the beginning of warm weather, and at the height of cycling season. When so many Hamiltonians have lost their jobs, when taking public transit is limited due to physical distancing requirements, when taking taxis or ride shares is costly, when driving cars isn't even an option for so many, and when buying a new bike is no longer an option in our city. If we fail to act today, those bikes are going to go into storage, stranding thousands. Not only will the bikes be unusable, we will forfeit the work of over $700,000 in grants to the Everyone Rides initiative and jeopardize funding from the OMCC that are tied to our public bike share transit enhancement program that this council previously approved. All of which help make this a near cost zero program to the city. In regards to the Everyone Rides initiative, it's important to note that Hamilton has 500 ERI individual memberships, and 10 social service organizations provide access to their clients through that program, enabling newcomers, people on low income, and some who are not able to ride the two-wheel bikes in our system to access adaptive tricycles. If we fail to act today, we are forcing them, our residents, to spend more money and to take more health risks. If we don't act together today, we risk destroying SoBi for good. This isn't something we can afford to lose. In fact, just last year, we approved staff looking into expanding the system across Hamilton, including shopping districts like Lime Ridge Mall, Concession Street, downtown Ancaster, downtown Waterdown, Confederation GO Station, and other areas in the city where residents and businesses have clearly expressed an interest in being able to access SoBi far beyond wards 1, 2, and 3. This motion is not a permanent solution, but it's a temporary one, and it buys us the time that we need in order to find the right, sustainable, viable, long-term operational fit for this program. None of us asked to be in this situation. No one wanted this. We've been forced into this situation, and we have a responsibility as a municipal government to serve our people. Our people need us to save this award-winning bike share program that is absolutely essential to daily life of so many people at an unprecedented time. I urge my colleagues to really truly consider the needs of thousands of our residents whose mobility has been impacted by this decision by Uber. And I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Councillor Farr. 1 second here. We're not hearing you just yet. I did mention that I'm calling you the Turtle King from here on in.
How many speakers do you have?
We have 7.
Thank you. Thank you to the mover. I'm pleased to second it. Thank you to all of my colleagues this term and past who have supported our bike share program, are very successful. And as noted many times in the many hours we've been talking about this today and in past efforts, award-winning SOBI program, very successful. In fact, the most successful in any medium-sized city in the nation. So June 1st, we know that our deadbeat deal with Uber is done, and that's all we know. That is on public record, a real half-ass, half-page Uber message to us that the whole world has read, I guess, now that have been interested in this, and that legal is vetted and legal's talked to them a few times. And all we know is June 1st. All that we have is that date on record, and that comes before our next council meeting. So I'm just pleased that we have the ability to deal with this now before even one day of leaving the 26,600, I believe, in the lurch. And to that, and that's all I really want to focus on here, Mr. Mayor, and to my colleagues. And I think it's important. The stadium visual was a good one, but this is a deadbeat deal. And it's one that's affecting a large amount of our citizens. And this isn't our first deadbeat deal. I mean, we've had a whole lot of them here in this city over the decades. We've had contractors, especially, perform poorly, who can't do business with us, many of them still. Or in the past, they've had repercussions to 2 to 5 years or whatever, where they can't do bids anymore in our city because of such a deadbeat deal, where they had an expectation from the public and from council representing the public to do a specific job. And guess what? In each and every one of those deadbeat deals all over this city, the job got done. The public's expectations were fulfilled. We covered it. And that's what we're asking of those who are still on the fence on this tonight, to do that, to cover it. And to cover it in most of those infrastructure projects, the roads or the rec centers or the rinks where we did deadbeat deals and we covered it and lived up to the public's expectations. We had insurance, we had ways to cover the cost. In this motion before you, we have a reserve. We don't have a taxpayer funded solution for the next 6 months. We have wards 1, 2, and 3, who we've been reminded of by a certain councillor many, many times as being the only ones who benefit from this, when it's not true at all. And I don't want to get into, all the people that commute that use it for that 5K or less, as it was anticipated when we originally approved it, that are working in the nerve center and commuting, or going for lunch with friends and live somewhere else in the city. But that's fine. We should know this, regardless if you're worried about it only being a 1, 2, 3 thing, which it's not. 1, 2, 3 have you covered as a non-levy impact in this motion here tonight. So we heard staff tell us that they need 6 months to do a deal, to find a good operator. That money will cover that 6 months. Council's already agreed to get into the e-bike, the power commuter game across this city, and in seeking our operator in the next 6 months, if we're able to proceed with what's before us here today, we can throw that into the mix. Perhaps give that operator the ability to exclusively or potentially exclusively deal in the e-bike or the e-scooter game as well. But we'll have time to do that with what's before us in the non-levy impact, the reserve funded motion that's before us. So we need an operator. We need time to get an operator. We would prefer not to shelve SOBIs, I would hope. given that we don't shelve all those other projects where we did deadbeat deals. We get them done. We live up to the public's expectations in this city, in this ambitious city of ours, and hopefully we can do that here. Maybe not all of us can support the motion, but maybe enough of us tonight can, and we can keep Sobe going and not miss a day, because June 1st Uber's done, and that'll be it. That's what we know for sure. So let's keep 26,600 Hamiltonians happy. Let's maintain expectations like we do, and get a new operator in the interim at no cost to the taxpayer, as was always contemplated when it came to this award-winning Sobe Bicycle program. Thanks again to the mover, and I hope we can get the votes tonight, folks.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson. And then we have Councillors Danko, Jackson, Whitehead, Clark, Partridge, and myself. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we've beaten this thing to death for today. We're in our 15th hour, and I like to move, we call the question, because I can't learn anything more. And besides that, I'm out of insulin. I have been for 4 hours. I got to get home. I think Councillor Martin wants to second that.
Well, you know what? God bless you, but we do have a speakers list. So if
I
you
don't
want to
care. I
if
put
you
the
wanna-
motion. I want to
Sorry.
vote on.
Okay, fine. Put the motion.
I did.
Seconded
I'm
by?
calling the question.
Okay, thank you. And who's going to vote on that? Everybody's waving. What are we waving for? I got a speakers list. I'm getting hand signals now. Okay, I'm gonna say that the motion's on the floor. Call the question. I think that's an appropriate motion. Somebody's got their. It's got a lot of waving going on here. I'm not sure what I'm time out. Okay, somebody speak. I'm not hearing anybody. So I have a speakers list. Sorry. Danko's next on the speakers list. So Councillor Danko, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and respecting Councillor Farr's time and that he needs to get to take care of his mother, for God's sakes. One question through you to finance staff, the area rating counts that are identified in the motion. Area rating is specific to the taxpayers in those wards. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the funds are levied from homeowners, property owners in the former city of Hamilton. So again, the approximately 13 millions levied in the former city of Hamilton, and it's distributed equally across the what was wards 1 through 8, but now includes part of 9 and 14 as well.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Okay, so I do have to go back to Councillor Ferguson and Marula put forward a motion to call the question. We didn't address that. I think we need to. Okay. Terry, I got Councillors Clark waving at me. I got Terry Whitehead waving at me. I've got Tom Jackson waving at me. I've got just about everybody giving me signals. So I'm going to go to Councillor Clark first off. Councillor Clark, go ahead on the motion to call the question.
Thank you. It's simply a point of order. You can't call the question until you've exhausted the first time speakers list on the motion at hand. That's in our procedural bylaw.
Thank you. And any other comments on that? Councillor Whitehead, you're of the same ilk. Thank you very much. Sorry. Yeah, and I'm getting to that. Yeah, thanks. I'm going to start losing it here. I'm going to start smoking pretty soon. Councillor Jackson, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, I'm willing to withdraw my speech if everyone else after me will, in deference to the 15 hours we've had this meeting for, in deference to Councillor Farr and his poor mom in the hospital, and in deference to Councillor Ferguson's medical situation. But if others after me get into long speeches, I'll get back on the list. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Whitehead.
I mean, it's unfair because the mover, Mr. Mayor, spent some time making the argument, and if Councillor Jackson is now suggesting don't make a counter argument to it, then we lost the whole purpose of a debate, and I can't subscribe that. So here, my issue, Mr. Mayor, is that with COVID-19, we're looking at a $60 million. Actually, ask the question. The area rating, we have a policy, right? Through the chair?
Yes, we have a policy.
What's the policy? Could it be spent on operation?
Mike Sigarik?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intention of the funds is to be applied to infrastructure in the former city of Hamilton.
Thank you. And we had another review, Mr. Mayor, of the area rating, and it was reaffirmed through that review that it would be specifically for the purposes of operation, or sorry, capital. In fact, some councillors were cooked, their goose was cooked because there were suggestions that they were paying for operation and that practice had to end. So that's a policy that you're asking for an exemption for. So that's number one. That's like dealing with planning where they come with all these amendments. Number two, the council took a position early that they would not put any operating into the bike share program from day one. And again, here we go, going to be putting taxpayers' money in towards the program for operation. So that's two now amendments to long-term city policy. Mr. Mayor, who would have thought that the only way that you can have a good community, you completely abandoned it by removing the bike share program, when I got a lot of residents from the mountain, West Mountain, who take their bicycles to work. They don't ride Sobe. They exist. They're getting their exercise. They're doing their climate change. They're doing their thing. In fact, there are a lot more bicyclists that don't ride Sobe than bicyclists that do. So there's another strong argument. And why are we becoming a socialist society and feel that we have to start buying bicycles for people? What's next? I mean, I can hear the environmentalists cry now. Why don't we get rideshare car? Let's buy cars. Let's buy cars for the mountain and call it car share. But we'll make sure it's environmentally friendly by making it electric. Let's just buy things because we got lots of money. Oh, by the way, we're $60 million in debt and growing. We got COVID-19. I did not support the tax increase this year because I knew that the COVID-19 would be devastating in regards to the financial consequences. And now it's coming true, $60 million and growing. How in the heck? We might have to cancel breakfast programs. So when you start talking about triage and importance, the dam has got holes and it's leaking. It's leaking and it's about to collapse. And I'm not going to come to the rescue of those councillors that want to take their area rating money to fill the real priorities than filling what's called an enhancement. And the last point I want to make, it sounds like we don't give bicycles away to people that don't have the financial means. For years and years and years, and continue free bikes through Canadian Tire programs, through Mike's share programs, free bikes to people who don't have the financial means. So to suggest that this is a primarily a social program for the poor, it's not. You have to have a credit card. You have to have a membership just to get access to your bike. The only way that you get a lower fee is if you get subsidized through different programs. No different than us getting free bikes, used bikes for people that don't have the financial means. So you can't make the poverty argument. You can't make the argument that is a good public policy when you're looking at 90% of the city don't even have the service and probably will never have the service. And a reminder to the taxpayers in Ward 8, Ward 14, we did have the program. I pushed for it second year. You had it at Mohawk College, 1 year,
Okay.
They brought it downtown. Now I pushed again, they got this plan, and everyone's so hung up on the plan. But remember, this is just a plan to take a look at it. There's no guarantee that they're going to expand the program beyond where it is now, because businesses don't abandon a golden goose. They don't run away when you got a very viable business that's making money, yet people are leaving. And then we talk about what a successful program it is.
So Councillor Whitehead, can I take it from your comments that you're not in favor of this recommendation?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in synopsis here from what I've been able to gather tonight. We took $1.6 million from Metrolinx many years ago to create Sobe. Then we invested 900,000 of 1.3 million. We didn't get, we saved some money on it. Then we added another 150,000. So we're at $2.65 million. We didn't spend 361,000 on the controllers. That's still unspent money. So we've spent 2.289 million, so $2.3 million. Of that $2.3 million, my best guess is that $300,000 came from the city. 20% from the 900,000, then the 150,000. So I'm perplexed because we've spent $2.3 million, and now we're just going to say, okay, it's all gone, and we're going to put everything in a garage without searching out options for private sector involvement. And that seems to be the genesis of where some of our colleagues are going. And I get we don't have the extra money to spend, but unless we actually search out the private sector support, we won't know whether or not this is a business that is viable with, for example, monthly memberships across the board, and they make adjustments with their sponsorship program. I have concerns how we're going to explain to the province our willingness to throw away $2.3 million in investment on bikes that we agreed to. I'm not sure how I'm not sure how I can explain that to the province, that we took $2.3 million, bought a bunch of bikes, 900 bikes, but now that Uber has backed out, we're walking away. And that's a significant loss of money. And we can all say, yeah, you can sell the bikes, you can do this and that. But at the end of the day, we made this agreement with Metrolinx and we went forward with it. They didn't do this on their own. The city of Hamilton went forward with it. So I'm inclined to support the motion that's before us to find out exactly whether or not there will be a private sector buy-in or not. And if there isn't, then the whole deal's out the window. And finally, Mr. Mayor, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in the tenor of the debate tonight. I really don't think it's necessary and certainly not warranted to level ad hominem commentary against our colleagues. I know we all get passionate. I get passionate. But man, there's been a lot of things flying across the room tonight, and it's not necessary. And I know you've done your best, sir, to rein it in, but I felt compelled to put that on the record. I know we can do better. Thank you.
And we should. Thank you. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, when you're heading into hour 16 of a meeting, there's bound to be some comments made that not everybody is happy with. I'm not supportive of this motion at all. And here's why. From the very beginning, we said no cost to the taxpayer. Right from the get-go, no cost to the taxpayer. And yet, we're looking at using area rating funds. And Mike, my question to you, where do the area rating funds come from? From wards 1 to 8, now including, I believe, 9 and 14. Are they taxpayer dollars?
Yep. So through you, Mr. Mayor, they are levied each and every year to property owners in those wards for former City of Hamilton wards.
Okay, thank you. So it's taxpayers' dollars. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so we said we would not use taxpayer dollars and from the City of Hamilton, and we are now proposing through this motion to use $400,000 in taxpayer money. So I'm not on side for that. The other exception that I take exception to is that we use the area rating funds for operational commitment. When we clearly, as previous councillor said, That's not the intent of using our area rating funds. It is not to be used for operation, and yet here we are suggesting that. But what I really take objection to is the idea and the suggestion that council approve the single source procurement. And the very people that are suggesting this are the ones that have repeatedly voted against any motions brought forward for single source procurement. So if we're not going to support single source, why are we suggesting in this motion that we do support a single source procurement? It does not make sense to me. It's a bad deal. It doesn't make money. And, you know, to suggest that it would be students that would be using this, well, McMaster and Mohawk have now put their semesters online. And I think we're looking at online learning for quite some time. So just how viable is this going to be ongoing in the future? How sustainable is it? I don't believe it is. So for that reason, I'm out. I'm not voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have first-time speakers in general, I think, is Councillor Vanderbeek and Councillor Johnson. So I'm going to go with Councillor Vanderbeek and Councillor Johnson.
Thank you,
You're
Mr.
on,
Mayor.
you're on the list. There's a growing list. Marula, Jackson, Pearson, Pauls, myself as well. I'm going to go after Councillor Johnson.
I'm going to order breakfast.
Yes.
I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mike Zagarek. So this motion is suggesting that 3 would pay the money to run the bike share program for the next number of months. Part of that bike share program is not in the former city of Hamilton, it's in Dundas. Can that money be spent in Dundas?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the policy, again, the policy references the intention of the funds to be spent where the funds are raised, which is the former city of Hamilton. But as the motion references is, again, it's a council policy and it's at the discretion of council if council wants to waive that requirement.
It is a policy of council.
It is a policy of council.
Okay. Thank you. I'm having a hard time with this one. And I'm not going to make a big long speech, Councillor Jackson. I think it's a good program, and I really hope we can find a way to give it another life. I have a concern that if this, so this is a question I'm not sure who to. I have a concern that if this motion fails, will there still be an opportunity to search out a third-party operator? I don't know who that goes to. Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it to you to direct it.
Well, Jason Thorne is probably most in the know in terms of what's available out there. But Jason, do you want to opine on that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there's very limited time, and if there is no financial commitment from the city, we could certainly try, but I would not want to suggest that we'd have much prospect of finding an operator by the June 1st deadline, other than going back to the original Hamilton Bike Share Inc. organization.
And so through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jason, what stops us going back to the original bike share operator? Other than they may not want to take it on.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is what the motion directs, is that would be the single source agreement. To make the program financially sustainable, if we look at models in other cities, they would be having to be look at ultimately some sort of sponsorship, advertising revenues, those sorts of things in order to actually try to get it to a break-even prospect. I don't think we would necessarily be able to find someone in a very short period of time who could operate the program from day one without an operating subsidy coming from somewhere. There's more hope that if there is a competitive procurement process with more time, that such an offer might be able to come forward.
Okay. Thanks for that. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Somebody flashed a sign to me, said happy Thursday. So happy Thursday, everybody. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I keep hearing beeping, so I don't know if I'm on or off. Okay, so this motion asks for an upset limit of 400,000 kilometers, $400,000. There's also a question of the software. My understanding was the software was the most expensive component to this whole program. So where's the software coming from? My understanding is it's right now in the ownership of the operator, which is Uber, until June 1st. So what are we doing about the software? Why is the software all of a sudden easy to access?
Jason?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the software is actually a separate company called Mobility Cloud that Uber contracts to, and Hamilton Bike Share Inc., if council goes in this direction, would have to also enter into an agreement with that same Mobility Cloud. They are the ones that maintain the software platform, the kind of the software backbone of the system.
Thank you. And what happens after the 9 months is up? Are we back to square one? Are we coming back to the same debate that we're having today? Because area rating's not going to be able to cover it for the next 4 or 5 years. We're just asking for an interim amount. So what happens after 9 months? And we have no operator. We're back to square one.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we would be going to market to see if we could find an operator.
And if we can't?
And if we can't find an operator, then we'll be back to a situation where the program is not viable and can't continue. If we can find an operator, then we would bring that back to council for your consideration as a new operator for the program.
And was Hamilton Bike Share the only option we have at this moment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've heard other expressions of interest. It's given the short timeline, trying to find an organization that would actually be able to mobilize this quickly in the Hamilton market is a challenge. So our sense was that the only group that could pick it up without interruption of service was the group who had been operating it up until the end of last year. Just given the short amount of time we have to actually try to find someone to pick up the program.
So, Mr. Thorne, this sounds like we have some interest that's out there, but nobody wants to see a break in the service. And this is why this $400,000 and all this angst is beginning with this council, because nobody wants to just take a pause for a month or two until we can get the right operator, correct?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the other option is to take the bikes out of service and take the program out of service until the procurement process runs its course. We indicated in our report that we estimate it probably would take about 6 months to do a competitive process and make a selection. So I think the councillors characterized it correctly. It's a question of what happens during that interim of trying to find a longer term partner.
Okay, and thank you. Sorry, Councillor Farr, I hadn't had the opportunity in camera to ask these questions. These were public questions, and I know that if this was my mom, and my dad is in the same boat as your mom is, so I completely understand. So thank you very much for the time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, being that it is time sensitive, I will defer to someone else if they're going to defer to a vote, or I'll speak. So as long as everyone's on the same board, I think Councillor Farr is agreeing.
We have a lineup of speakers. Sorry, Jackson, Pearson, Collins, Wilson, Collins, myself.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
I saw your chat line comment there that your mom's sedated, she's fine, debatable.
She's fine. Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, my apologies.
Or
Okay,
she's in good hands, I should say.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'll speak then. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Mid 2000s, we get a report indicating a bike share program. We were sold on the entire program that it will never cost us a cent from the general levy at the municipal level. We knew it was going to cost us, obviously, at the provincial level, because it was a provincial program and it was under the Liberal government and not the present Conservative government. So here's a council that goes through a process, through public delegations, and it will never cost us a cent. Whether it works or doesn't, at no time we're reinformed that if this thing goes south, that we're going to come back to the general levy. Because if that were the case, we would never have started the program. Now, this is not about cycling. As everyone knows, I've supported and have been a huge advocate of cycling. From the lanes, the Cannon Street lanes, the late Bernie Morelli, who championed that with Councillor Farr, and I strongly supported with Councillor Collins and Jackson and Ferguson and Johnson and everyone else, and I'm sorry, Partridge, Pearson, the majority of us, we have been committed based on all the challenges that we're faced with, but we have been committed to expanding cycling lanes. And I and Councillor Collins back in 2003, we spearheaded through a strategic planning effort the pedestrian bridge, which is a cycling and pedestrian bridge. It's the largest single cycling and pedestrian infrastructure development in the city's history, one project. And guess who initiated it? I did, and so did Councillor Collins. And it's now there, 20 some odd $20 million of pedestrian and cycling infrastructure. And then people consider us to be non-supportive, which is moronic and not factual. So, as we move forward on this discussion, and we understand that we have a commitment to the public in Hamilton, that this will not cost them anything. That's called integrity. So, when you go to the public and you say, we're going to support, and the majority of us are still here, I think, we're going to do this, but trust us. We're not going to ask the municipal taxpayer to pay for this because the province is going to pay for this. And guess what? At no time, even if this thing fails, is this going to cost us anything. Now, we're hearing 1.8 million for this, 400,000 here, and it's all taxpayers' money. There's only one taxpayer. So the difference is when the province pays for it, you have 15 million people that are paying into it in a progressive manner. When the city does it, you have 500,000 people doing it in a regressive manner. Not sustainable, folks, particularly in a worldwide pandemic. People are losing their homes, losing their jobs. We're in the middle, we are in a middle of a depression, not a recession. And I said this weeks ago. These are depression numbers. This is a new reality. So with this new reality that everyone's talking about, over and above the social distancing, is that you have to be looking at the future. And right now, the future is uncertain. And now we're faced with, and now we're actually spending hours talking about a new program. We're $60 million in the hole, and we're spending hours talking about a new program on the general levy as people lose their homes, jobs, and they have no idea what their future holds. Really? I'm beside myself, to be quite frank. Now, we have options, as we've mentioned, and the options are really clear. The path of least resistance, in my eyes, is one that ultimately protects the taxpayer. Doesn't bring the taxpayer into a situation where they're going to be subjected to potentially compounding what we promised would not happen, and that is to pay more. So here we have it, $400,000. And then I hear the argument that, oh, it's wards 1, 2, or 3. Okay. Cute, but not true. So historically speaking, the area rating debate, and at that time it was councillors Collins and Powers who got together and from the rural or the suburban area with the urban area and decided how are we going to deal with the elimination of Parks and Rec area rating. Our suburban friends didn't, because of the tension surrounding amalgamation, did not want to see us actually decreasing taxes at their expense, or what they see as their expense. So my only contribution to this debate, and that's because we're in that at that time, we were experiencing significant flooding in the east end of Hamilton. So my primary objective at that point was to try to move 25 years worth of infrastructure into a 5 to 8 year period, which ultimately led to the elimination of the flooding crisis that we were faced with in the East End. And in doing that, I said, this is a great idea, but we have to make sure that it's all about our 10-year capital infrastructure program that we never ever can catch up to. Because every year, $200 million be going to the hole. This is, we don't go looking for something to buy when your roof is leaking, the foundation is cracked, your landscape is destroyed, and your pool's liner isn't working, and you got no water in there, and really, you're living in a hellhole, and you say to your kids, "Hey guys, you want to go to Walt Disneyland?" No, you don't do that. And this is exactly what's happening here. Understanding that I support the program, but on a grand scheme of this worldwide pandemic and the fact that we're headed towards bankruptcy, it might be a good idea to stay focused and keep your eye on the ball. And the ball right now that you're looking at is not the ball the people of this city are looking at, because they're afraid of losing their homes, their jobs. They don't know where they're headed. And you guys are talking about bikes. I tell you, I prefer to deal with looking at a subsidy program for people to buy bikes, because you know what? Buying a bike right now would be more beneficial to the economy, particularly if you buy Canadian. So I want people on bikes. As I said, I cycle 20 kilometers a day, some days more, particularly after meetings like this. And in saying that, I'm also a great supporter and look forward to increasing and expanding what we've already done from an infrastructure standpoint in cycling. But I'm not in support of breaking my word and deceiving the public, because we said not 1 cent of municipal public money, not 1 cent. And most of you, or some of you, were there when you said that. Some of the new councillors who don't understand that frame of reference or didn't know about it, that's the reality of it.
Okay.
So
So
no, listen, I
can
wanted to
just
call the
ask-
question.
can
I
just
wanted to call
ask?
the question. I wanted to call the question. You chose to shut that down. Now you
I
have to
didn't
listen.
choose to shut anything down, but I did indicate that we shouldn't go on ad nauseum either. So to be
I don't think this is
fair,
a nauseum.
to be fair,
this was a
to be
planned.
fair, can we just be reasonable about this at 1 o'clock or approaching 1 o'clock in
I
the
tried
evening?
to help you help yourselves
No,
by calling the question.
I think we've got your point.
Did I not? Now
I
we're in a
think we've got your
situation,
point.
and you made your bed. We're all going to have to sleep in it now. So
well, we'll all be sleeping sooner or later.
yeah, no doubt. So anyway, to get to the point, my last point, I guess, is the pig and poke scenario of all of this. This thing is written on the back of a matchbox because we have no idea where we're going. Over and above what I've already said, we're now going to enter a phase of spending $400,000 that could be used to pay down our capital deficit, which is why it's created, or spend on this program that we don't even know if we're going to find a long-term solution. I can't support it, especially in this new reality, because in this new reality, that money needs to be kept in a very safe spot because we're not sure where we're headed. And this decision tonight is really going to be indicative because we really don't know where we're headed. Listen, I'm retiring, as you know. You guys are going to have to run another election. This is a defining moment because I'll tell you, the people are not going to accept this kind of questionable decision making during a worldwide pandemic. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. So I've got myself on the speakers list, and then Jackson, Pearson, Pauls, Wilson, and Collins. And I think it's been a fascinating debate, and I think there's much more going on here than just Uber bike, which I think is unfortunate. And you know what? All the rhetoric around we don't have the money. We're spending lots of money on roads. We're spending lots of money on transit. We're spending lots on money on facility repairs. And so when it comes to something that some people, are now suddenly trying to kind of cast away, suddenly we don't have any money. So I think that's rich. I don't buy that notion at all. This is not a defining moment for this council. And I'm gonna continue on. I'm not even gonna look at you. This is not a defining moment for this council. It is very important that we consider the very important aspect of mobility in our community. It's relative to climate change. It's relative to all the things that we talk about in providing mobility in our community. We're not giving up the transit system in the city of Hamilton. We're not going to be laying off all of the employees in the city of Hamilton to try and make up the deficit. We're asking for our federal and provincial partners to help us out. And my bet is that they're going to do that ultimately, especially on the transit side. And this notion that we don't have any money in this game is ridiculous. We've already had it identified that the city of Hamilton, this council, voted $300,000 worth of dollars to go to a program that would help add to the volume of the bike share program in the city of Hamilton. We've already got money in the game. Provincial government put money in the game. We said yes, bring it. We want bike share in our community. We want that kind of mobility to happen in our city, and we all complicitly went along with that. And this whole and it's so Hamilton to say we want it for nothing. Kind of we dropped that same thing on LRT, and no other community in the country has not participated in LRT. No other community in the country, I'm confident, is not participating in their bike share program. But in Hamilton, no, we want it for nothing. We want it for zero. We won't contribute a dime. And by the way, it's all about the lower city. It doesn't help me in Flamborough or in Glanbrook or wherever it is. Therefore, it's not an important issue for me. And I can tell you that I've supported things in communities all the way through in the entirety of the community, whether it has an impact in the lower city or not in the lower city, because it's the right thing to do in certain parts of the community that have needs. So I think it's critically important that we get away from this notion that it's not going to impact my residents because they don't live downtown. Well, it's going to impact everybody. Councillor Whitehead, why are you pointing a finger? Well, get on the speakers list. So I really appreciate, maybe there's another quiz that you want to do. I really appreciate the fact that this is not something we just want to throw away. The ability to get this back up and running once it's gone is going to be very, very complicated, and we already know it's going to be much more expensive. And so to say to this investment and to the many people that are out there that are using this facility, I think it's critically important that we don't just throw it away, that we give it an opportunity to have life. And I have some confidence, and I'm going to ask Jason Thorne just one more time. People have expressed an interest, and Councillor Farr, if you want to throw out your notion a little later on about what you've heard people say, I think is important for us to hear. So Jason Thorne, I have some confidence that between interest in providers out there that have expressed an interest, Jason, maybe you could just outline that one more time. Who has expressed an interest in being an operator longer term that we can't sort out in a week, but we can get a process going, which is what this motion asks for, to get them to participate in that. Give us another indication of the kind of people that have expressed an interest to you.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, or to you, Mr. Mayor, we've heard from private sector operators, private sector groups who do operate similar systems in other cities. We've also heard from what I would classify as potential community partners who who are more local partners who'd be interested in playing a role in the operation of a system.
And is there room in your mind for you know, if we had to put a package together to move the fees up a little bit in terms of membership and to move the per kilometer rate, whatever that is, up a little bit to raise a few additional dollars through this system? Is that an opportunity that can also be done? Because I understand we're the lowest cost, municipal operation in terms of user fees, probably in North America. Is there room for some growth in that area?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think yes, and the other area where I think Uber was for whatever reason not particularly interested in exploring is around sponsorships and advertising.
Right.
Was not a again, for not sure for what reason, but for whatever reason was not something that they really pursued. That I would expect to be a big part of any potential proposal coming forward in the future.
Right. And so in your mind, are the elements of a low cost or no cost opportunity for an operator to take this on, is that an opportunity that's realistic in terms of the kind of current environment that we're in?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly there's been enough inquiries to suggest that we may get a potential operator. I think you're right that probably an operator that would look at revenues, would look at fees. We are the lowest cost system of any system that I know. And we're probably looking at sponsorships and partnerships as well as part of any sort of proposal package.
Great, thank you. So look, I'm fully supportive of this. Not that any of us is irresponsible. We're all responsible for our decision making. We're all responsible for the bottom line tax issues. We're all mindful of that in each and every occasion. But this is an occasion where the costs of throwing this away, I think, is just too high, and the benefits in terms of our citizens and our mobility in our community and the ability to demonstrate climate change initiatives and all the things that are good about it, I think are an upside that we shouldn't and should never throw away. So I'm going to be supportive of this motion. I hope that all members of council will be, as an interim step towards getting a longer term operator that will continue to make this system viable in our community and useful for our citizens to participate in. And I do like the stadium. 26,000 people, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of people that are getting benefit from this, that have put money on the table to say, I want to use this system. I'm prepared to take on a membership, and I'm going to be actively using this to the tune of some, is it 78 to 80,000 rides per year? If I got that number correctly, Jason, maybe I got that wrong, but correct me again. How many rides we've been able to achieve on an annualized basis since it's been operating?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the annual, but we've got what is 1.6 million trips since the onset of the program,
which is 5 years ago.
About 5 years. So
a couple of 100,000 trips per year, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. And and I've heard everyone say around the room here that it's a wonderful program. Fantastic program. Works brilliantly well. All we need to figure out now is the next steps in terms of making it financially viable going forward. And I think the elements of that are all there. Those are my comments, and I'm going to be supporting the motion. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Farr, Councillor Ferguson, I wish to apologize to both of you. I had removed myself from the speakers list on the condition that nobody else would speak to it, so that our 15-hour marathon could conclude sooner than later. And so I apologize, but that's why I'm back on the speakers list in light of 4 or 5 who have spoken, and took advantage of the fact I took myself off the list. Mr. Mayor, I won't be long here. I'm going to say that Uber must be absolutely licking their chops as they've hopped on one of their ride-sharing vehicles and are skedaddling out of Hamilton, abandoning our city on this social bicycle program. Good luck, by the way, to our legal department, whatever they may or may not decide to do, as Uber's heading back to California or the Grand USA. Quickly, a little historical context, Mr. Mayor, as I try to do where I feel it's appropriate. Uber came into town like a cyclone about 5 years ago, and they wanted to totally not play by the rules of our taxi industry. Totally unfair advantage they wanted. I remember the grief they gave Municipal Law Enforcement Director Ken Leanders and his staff because they were ride sharing. They weren't the same as taxis. Anyways, long story short, the taxi industry unionized, always having mechanical inspections, criminal checks on their drivers, etc. Many of them just eking out a living as it was. And the mighty Uber came to town. And I remember the lobby. I didn't even know what Uber was 5-6 years ago. And when they came to town, the lobby in this community from the progressives, a lot of the millennials telling me, you know, Uber's faster, quicker, cheaper, don't have to wait as long, click an app. And it was all at the expense of our taxi industry. Many of my constituents who drove taxi, many of them from multicultural backgrounds and communities who have degrees after their names, but coming to their new home, had to take any job just to feed their families. And many of them became cab drivers. And I remember when the galleries were packed with a couple of hundred drivers from the taxi industry, so upset that Uber wanted to come in at an unfair advantage and just basically not comply with rules and regulations, because after all, they're the mighty Uber. So, Mr. Mayor, I say all that just to say that I am somewhat in a very cheeky manner, just grinning and watching the display of Uber abandoning our city, putting council and the community in this horrible situation because they didn't feel a contract was a contract. Just a deplorable, awful situation of divisiveness that has caused us to now be one against the other when we could have had 7-8 months, a contract being fulfilled till February of next year, and we could have possibly put other plans in place, like we've heard from some members of council, like Councillor Marula and others, who have said, look, they've got people on standby just waiting. And unfortunately, Uber has done this. And lastly, Mr. Mayor, I'll reiterate again, as I said on the item we dealt with the staff report, there was a mountain site. It was up on concession at Mountain Park Avenue at Mountain Drive Park in the last term of council. I supported it. I was thrilled. And Mr. Topolovic, a couple of years later, took it, put it downtown, was more downtown centric because I guess the usage was greater downtown, even though I've got hundreds of cyclists that love the social recreational component of enjoying the amenities across the mountain on bicycles. So, Mr. Mayor, because of Uber, and I can in principle absolve them of what they've done to our community come next Monday, I'm voting against this. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly, again, quite a lively debate and conversation around the table. This is absolutely, you know, we always say there's always the most difficult votes that we have to make. And, you know, I've listened to this. At first, I'm very skeptical of supporting the motion, only in light of the fact of a lot of the comments that have been made. But I then have to look at the other side of this going, just as the previous speaker mentioned about Uber and all the things of them coming in. Well, you know, at the end of the day, the biggest losers are the 26,000 people plus that use this system, that take pride in being Hamiltonians and use it because they need it, because it's their way to get groceries, it's their way to get to work, it's their way to visit family members, and it's just a way to get out and see the community and get their exercise. So, you know, I think we have to, on for all fairness, if we said here, this is drop dead, June 1st, it's done, 900 bikes are going to be put in storage. I just can't fathom that even being done. And these bikes even holding up, that they'll even be usable no matter how much time they're put in storage. There's now the devaluation of the assets that we actually own at a worse time. You know, I'm not going to elaborate at all. We know COVID. We know what it's doing to everybody out there. I really believe that, you know, we have to give staff an opportunity. You know, it's only 6 months to say, find a solution. We have to keep this system operating. It is an asset to the city of Hamilton and to all of our taxpayers. What doesn't matter. It's a lower city. If somehow, some way, people always get an opportunity, even if I left City Hall, to ride the bike to Eastgate Square. So, I mean, there are opportunities there. And I think that comment was made about integrity. I think integrity is that we take the stand of looking to do the best we can for the users of this system and hope that it can be enhanced by a new provider and that we can get more users on board. That would be the ideal situation. You know, when I look at that, you know, some time ago, Mr. Mayor, and I hate to, you know, we hate to use the LRT issue, but it was before LRT even, as some councillors may recall. I think we spent more money painting lanes to decipher or to delineate a temporary bus lanes in the downtown core, and then turned around and had them removed at a cost of about $300,000 to have the paint removed. And that I actually oppose. I thought, what an absolute waste of money. So, you know, there are things that we do, and we do them because it's just another way we have to keep moving this city forward, whether we all agree to it or not. Another point, Mr. Mayor, is, and we have to look at these things. I remember many years ago, it was on the table to deal with the golf courses. 2 golf courses in the city of Hamilton. Do we need them? Well, we didn't just shut them down. We gave an ultimatum to staff. Go and see how you can make these self-sufficient and how you can run them. They did. They met that match and they continue to do that. So, you know, we have to allow an opportunity for our staff to look at this and bring us back something that hopefully we can all be very, very proud of. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be very brief. I mean, public is telling us right now they want this service. They're using this service. 600 new users since COVID. Isn't that our job as public servants to respond to what our residents need and are asking us for, particularly during these conditions, to provide for safe passage? And I really take umbrage when there's some members of a council suggesting that we're being delinquent in our financial responsibility, that people are hurting, people are losing their job, or they're waiting for their job to return. And if we take this service away, we know that there are frontline workers using bike share right now. And what alternative is that going to leave them? To not get to their job? To have to put money into a single occupancy vehicle? To wait for 2 buses to go by? I'm very confident that I'm trying to do the best that I can. And the public is telling us they're using this. And this is part of our reopening. This is going to be part of our new normal. I am a little concerned when I hear comments about this is not making money. Is that the new standard against which we're going to measure public services now? Our arts are all going to have to be making money. Our recreational programs are all going to have to be making money in order for that to be of value. And it's about a public good, and that's what distinguishes governments from the private sector. So, of course, I don't want this to be our filling in subways moment or painting over a line that costs more money to paint. I agree with Councillor Clark. I also worry about if we just plow under $2.3 million, what signal are we saying to our other partners, whether it be the province or the federal government in the future? We need to be a trusted partner. We need to deal in good faith, and we need to look after the public good. So I will be supporting the motion, of course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Collins? Don't see him on the line right now. I'll get back to him. Councillor Pauls. Oh. Okay, Councillor Collins, you're up next.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just went to the washroom. Yeah, so I'll get to the point. In a perfect world, Uber would be the operator through 2020 and beyond. And in a less than perfect world, another private entity would have the financial ability to take on the operation and the associated costs. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And like others, I think it's important to revisit the original concept that the program was intended to achieve and how it was presented or sold to council at the time. So there's been a bit of a revisionist history tonight, but we've seen that before on other files, and that's okay. If you go to Hamilton Bike Share's website right now, and I think it's hamiltonbikeshare.org, the banner from the time when we first debated the launch of the program says, fact, the bike share system will be built at no cost to Hamilton taxpayers. And as has been summarized tonight, and we've received a great summary from Brian and Jason and others as it relates to the investments that have been made. The original funds were the 1.6 million from Metrolinx, from the province, and almost every single investment that's been made since the launch of the program, it's been provincial dollars, public dollars. And if you go back to the business plan that was presented to council and was debated at the Public Works Committee, the concept of the program was to be operated on sponsorships and memberships. There was no mention that this was going to continue to be a solely public funded entity from the time that it was launched until today. And I can recall that there were a number of questions from committee members at the time. I was on the Public Works Committee when it was presented, as was Councillors Jackson, Marula, Whitehead, and Ferguson, and all of the questions centered around the city's obligations. And there was one line in the report, and I have it here and I wrote it down, and it says that the city will not provide funds for the operation of the bicycle system. And I recall the discussion and all the questions essentially centered around that line. And people tried to pick apart that sentence to say, well, are we going to be in for capital? Are you sure you're not coming back for operating? And what if this doesn't succeed? And staff were very blunt in their response. In fact, you know, if you can go to Sam Craig's article that she wrote at the time, staff are quoted as saying, if not enough people use the bike share program, the city will dismantle it and sell the bikes. If we can't meet our targets, we'll get another provider or we're going to sell the bikes. And so between that time and today, I think the information that we received tonight has proven that it really can't function on its own. A private entity has tried to operate this and has failed. And it's not like this is a year into it. It's not like it's 18 months. We're 5-6 years now into this program. And I think it's important to understand the context as well. The monies that were received to date were from a provincial government that spent money like no other provincial government before. I don't know if you've noticed, but there is a new provincial government, and they have the exact opposite approach to making investments in cycling, in housing, and other investments of that type. So I'll be very interested to understand how this program functions, A, without municipal support, which was promised from the beginning, B, without a provincial government that is supportive of initiatives like this, and C, if you're relying on the private sector, you're doing it in the context of probably one of the worst economies in modern day history. So I think that historical context is important. And what's troubling about today's motion is that it completely ignores that historical context and some of the commitments that were made at the time. It's also completely oblivious to the financial situation that we're in now. And as was mentioned by others, we're facing a $60 million deficit this year. We're losing revenues in all areas, including transit, recreation. And the result is that we're looking at massive subsidies to keep much of our regular day-to-day programs going, which will put a further strain on an already overburdened tax system. And I think it's important to look down the road at Toronto in terms of the messaging that's coming from there. And if you caught Mayor Tory's press releases and some of the statements that he made last week, they're talking about unprecedented service cuts to core services, including fire, police, libraries, massive cuts to transit. And in comparison, and they also talked about 19,000 employees losing their jobs. In contrast, here in Hamilton, we're talking about taking on the obligations of the private sector when other communities are talking about cuts to those core services. So it really is a tale of two cities if you were to compare us to what's going on over there. And the messaging, I think, that's coming from our building here is terrible. This is all happening at a time when 1 in 5 people and businesses recently couldn't or didn't make a tax payment. So the motion here and the thrust to take on new cost, it's not surprising to me. It's almost become a hallmark of this council to spend money we don't have. We spent a decade collectively focusing our efforts on making the city more tax competitive. We lured all kinds of new businesses over 2 terms of office. And over those 2 terms of office, our average tax increase was 1.7%. I think that's something to brag about because we noticed a lot of growth. We noticed a lot of good things going on in this city up until the pandemic hit. And that happened because of the hard work of 2 consecutive councils. By comparison and in comparison, we've started this term at 2.2 and 2.9%. And we were lucky with 2.9 this year because there were a lot of initiatives that were poised to take that one well above 3. So I think the laissez-faire approach to the city's finances is regrettable. It's actually embarrassing. We're financially adrift right now. And as a collective, we are fiscally leaderless and completely out of touch with what's going on around us. You can continue to govern like it's 2019, but you're ignoring the obvious and you're only making matters worse. So I won't be supporting what's in front of us here for those reasons and many others.
Thank you. Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. The last time I voted, when it was 13 hours, I made the wrong decision. And now it's been 17 hours, so I don't know what I'm going to do. But I just want to say I am baffled by why a company, Uber, only has 6.5 months left on its contract that they would cancel and risk their reputation here in Hamilton. That baffles me. I can't understand that. Because there is something that I don't understand about the financial of Uber. They must be losing their shirt somehow. Because if 27,000 people paid and even 7,000 just signed up, do the math. There is money to be made. Even though we subsidize 500 people go free, there's something amiss here that I'm not getting. So I just want to say, I am in the biking committee and I love infrastructure. I love biking, but I bet most people that do bike share own a bike as well. And you said, oh, they don't. I know because I know a lot of bikers. I bike every day. I do. And for the environment, a lot of people are buying bikes. Ancaster Cycle told me I was trying to buy a bike for my friend together. And you know what he said? He sold out all of his bikes. So even though people are using the bike share, I believe they own a bike their own. They just want maybe convenience or what it is. But I would love to support it. I really would. But it's getting so late. I'm getting more confused because I wasn't here when the contract was made a long time ago. So I cannot support at this time, not knowing the financial that Uber is in, because for them to wreck the reputation, I can't see it for 6.5 months left, because they could walk away in 6.5 months, or they could sell it themselves to someone else if somebody really wants to buy it. So that's my opinion. But I said I care for people. I really do. I care that people have the opportunity of riding a bike, but I do believe that a lot of them, if we say there's 35,000 people now, I'm sure a lot of them own a bike as well. So that's my comment, and that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Marula, third time?
Good.
You're good? Okay. No further speakers. So we have the motion before us. It's probably time to get to it. So the motion is moved and seconded by Councillor Farr. All those, and let's call the vote. All those in favor and those opposed. Councillor Vanderbeek, your vote?
It's not popping up for me.
Okay. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. Councillor Whitehead, it's thumbs down. Did you vote? Who's that? Okay, we got to vote again, folks. Because Councillor Whitehead was absent, but then he came. So revote your, recast your votes for and against. Who needed to indicate through thumbs up? Councillor Vanderbeek was thumbs up. Councillor Whitehead was thumbs down. And that's a tie vote. So it loses on a tie. So I'm in your hands, councillors. What is your wish? Do we have an alternate motion? Somebody indicate? Councillor Collins, Councillor Marula, which one? Councillor Collins, go ahead.
Thanks. I think my motion that I had last week was that in the event that Uber canceled, that we would be putting the bikes in storage. So I'd like to direct staff to first pursue space that we currently own to make that happen. And if not, try to find a private sector, either space that we need to rent or someone who's willing to give us space to put those in storage until the appropriate time. So I guess at this point, it would be to report back with a plan in terms of how we will store those bikes between now and the time that it's out for procurement again.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion? Councillor Marula?
Councillor Marula.
I don't think we need a massive amount of debate on that. I think we all know where votes are. So back to the vote again. Call the question on that. All those in favor of that direction, please indicate. Councillor Whitehead, but
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, I saw a lot of waving going on.
When a motion normally goes forward, then you go to a speakers list and the mic won't go on. So I've been trying to contact clerks all night and no one's responding on the clerk front either. So I'm not sure, is there something broken down here?
I don't know. Is there something broken down? Are you hitting the right,
the right connection? I sent to Janet Pilon. I sent something to, I sent one to 3 different people earlier and I haven't got one response. So
through what process?
How do you do a point of order? How do you do a point of order when you're speaking?
It's a little bit challenging because we don't have that kind of process sorted out. So which point of order did you want to make?
Well, I don't have one now, but that one
just in case we do one. Okay.
No,
can we debate that some other time?
Well,
given the time of day that we're at,
you're not following our own procedural bylaw if you're not incorporating those processes. But having said that,
so you do understand that we're in a virtual meeting and it's a process that's a little challenged in terms of getting it all connected. We even have to have people put up their thumb to vote, and so let's just work with this and we'll get through it.
So when you see me waving, it's a point of order, Mr. Because I don't know how else to put it
You've
forward.
been waving all night, so you've had a point of order all night?
Only twice on a point of order. But Councillor Clark,
all I see is waving on your screen. That's all I see.
Councillor Clark actually caught the first one. That was the you have to go through the speakers list first. So that was my first point of order, and I had a second point of order when you were speaking. And you were speaking to the fact that this is like just another normal day in regards to our budgets. And I was thinking, what?
Well, that's
mean,
not a
you're-
point of order. That's not a point of order. That's a point of debate. So let's get on with it. Let's go.
So nothing prevents us from doing a clean the slate, creating a clear slate for a new operator to come in and do a bang up job with the new models that they've been talking about, what's happening in other communities.
Is that a question?
No, I want to comment that this is not preventing us to pursue concurrently a viable operator for bike share going forward.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So back to the vote. All those in favor of mothballing the bikes?
Sorry, Mr.
please.
Mayor.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, sorry. If I could just clarify the complete motion that Councillor Collins is putting down. If you could just repeat it, please.
Is my mic on?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. The direction was that staff first try to find a city-owned space to store the bikes so as to reduce the cost. If that's not possible, then we would look for private space, hopefully someone who has space that's willing to assist, and that they report back with whatever plan that they come up with as it relates to storing the bikes. I didn't have anything in there on the procurement side, but I took it as a given that that would happen.
So can I move that motion?
So I just want to clarify that section B of Councillor Nan's motion, B said that staff be directed to initiate a competitive procurement process with the goal of identifying a preferred long-term operator for the Sobe Bike Share Program and report back to council with the result of the procurement process prior to the end of 2020, and that failed.
I didn't have that as part of my motion. Mine was on storage right now.
Okay. But I'm just pointing out that staff will not be going forward and doing a procurement process.
They could do that in 2021, I think, based on the wording.
Yes, they could. Yep.
Okay. So the motion is that these Sobe bikes be mothballed. That's essentially it, and put in storage. Correct? Bottom line. Yeah. All right. So those that are in favor of that, please indicate. Those that are opposed, also indicate. Councillor Farr?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Sorry, I wasn't watching the screen. Go ahead.
You know, there really should be, I know it's late at night, but when we hit the microphone, when it doesn't work and emotions on the floor, we gotta have an auxiliary plan, because I'm trying to email DL assistance required and listen to the debate at the same time. And this is important, and I'm going to support what's before us. And it is basically doesn't require a debate, but we do need to address shorter term what we're going to do with our staff in negotiating and finding another operator. We still own and have 900 Sobe bikes, most of them in great condition, and no one is putting anything on the floor. We're only referencing without any motion that, oh yeah, we'll get to that in 2021. So at the appropriate time, come back to me, because I would like to test the will of council, albeit the late hour, that as soon as humanly possible, Peter Topolovich, Jason Thorne, Brian Hollingworth, whoever it is, gets going with the conversations with real estate or legal or whoever we've got to deal with to find an operator as soon as possible and before the bikes get too dusty. So please come back to me then, and I'll support what's before us, but I would also like to get negotiations going. Thank you.
Thank you. So Andrea, back to you. You indicated that that was a part of the previous motion that was defeated. So can Councillor Farr put a motion forward to go back to the same issue?
It would be considered a reconsideration. If you expect staff to go to and do a competitive process and report back before the end of the year, that motion already failed in front of council. So you're looking at a reconsideration.
That's fine.
Okay. I'll move a reconsideration at the appropriate time. I would really appreciate it if the mic works when the motion's on the floor. We need to be able to speak to issues, and not activating and allowing us to do that is a bit troubling. I know it's late. I don't know who is in charge of that or if it's the system itself, but it's difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
At the appropriate time, I'll move a reconsideration.
Councilor Marula.
I just want to help out along the lines. So I think what Councillor Farr is saying is, now that we've made the decision to put the bikes in storage, now we need staff to receive direction to aggressively pursue that private entity or the solution. And I think that's what he's looking for. I think that's a great idea, and I'll support that accordingly. I'll actually second that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Well, it's a point of order because the only way you can get a reconsideration and we can get this confirmed by the clerk, it has to be from someone that voted in the against the affirmative.
That was me. No.
So I voted in the affirmative. I'm prepared to. I'm prepared. So Councillor Farr can't move it, and that's the point I was trying to make earlier. I don't mind us giving that direction for staff to start pursuing that, and I don't have a problem moving the motion for the reconsideration on that component.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. In fairness, we haven't voted on the motion to mothball the.
Well, yeah. So just on that, I didn't realize
bikes.
I think next our clerk they clarified that we couldn't do this without a 2/3 vote because I was trying to amend Councillor Collins' motion with that motion. Then we found out we couldn't do it because of 2/3 vote. So that's why we're in the predicament we are now.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock.
Thank you. And I'm not supporting the mothballing motion, so I don't think that I want to go that route, and we haven't voted on that yet. So we'll see how that plays out. And I think it'd be unfortunate if we decide to do that. Councillor Clark.
What are we going to do? Okay, go.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Perhaps it's a late hour, I don't know, but I'm trying to understand. We're now voting on a motion to mothball and put all of the bikes in storage. But I'm hearing there's also an interest in having staff go out and find procurement in the private sector, which was in Councillor Nan's motion, the motion that we just defeated.
Correct.
So we're just gonna take all those bikes off the street, put them away, regardless of the 26,000 people that have memberships. And then we're going to try to do a reconsideration motion to look for the private sector to get involved. This is coming full circle. Yeah, I don't understand why we voted to take, I don't understand any of this. Very frustrating. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
This is we were told it's going to take us 6 months for proper procurement for competitive bids. This is consistent with that, and we just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And therefore, I will be moving the reconsideration. So there shouldn't be any confusion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marula. Can't hear you. Hang on a second. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so just to clarify, intent here is to not spend $400,000 of taxpayers' money that we don't have to potentially seek out a private sector operator who's going to come in like a shining, like a savior, and somehow take on the reality is the probability is we're not going to find someone. So that's why I'm opposed to spending taxpayers' money over and above the fact we committed to not doing it. So we're going to take the bikes, put them in storage, and mitigate the cost. And as I mentioned to you, there are a number of local business people who are actually going to be donating to do just that, as I mentioned to you earlier, and they will be contacting the city tomorrow, Jeanette Smith particularly. So again, we're working to try to have a stopgap that doesn't impact the general levy. And this exactly does that for that period of time and provide the 6 months that everyone seems so confident that they're going to be able to find someone. That's it. So I'm not sure why there is any confusion, as Councillor Wade had said. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
I'm fine. I quit.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion is to mothball the bikes. That's the first motion that we're going to be dealing with. So on that motion, those in favor or those opposed? we need any sign language motions? Councillor Nan, not in favor. Councillor Pauls, yay or nay?
I just don't like the word, put them in a mock or whatever you said. That's, it makes it sound like we're scrapping it.
We're
And we're
putting
not.
them in storage.
Storage is a better word. Thank you.
Okay, yes or no?
I put yes.
Thank you. And that carries 9-7. And Lloyd?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is Termy on?
You're on. Now you're off. Now you're on.
Okay. I'm just going to excuse myself now because I have to get home for obvious reasons. And so I won't be here for part of the 20% calculation of the vote. So have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night. You well? Sorry it took so long. We have other waivers. What are you waiving to do? Councillor Whitehead.
Motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, the motion is the second part of that, the staff to start moving forward on finding an operator through the proper procurement process.
Thank you. Seconder for that? Councillor Marula, thank you. Any comments or questions on that? It needs to be a reconsideration motion?
To be clear, we are waiving notice first.
Okay. So a motion to waive notice of that motion, moved by Whitehead, seconded by Marula. All in favor? Electronic vote? Yes? Of waiving notice? Oh boy. Councillor Nan, Councillor Ferguson's left the meeting. Councillor Nan, yea or nay? Okay, Councillor Whitehead, your motion
We're now doing a motion to reconsider.
That's, yeah.
to reconsider the motion on
Motion.
going out for procurement, right?
Yes.
Just that, yeah, just that piece.
We'll need a 2/3 again.
Need 2/3, right? We ready to make that vote?
That's moved by me, myself.
Yes, seconded by Councillor Marula.
Right.
Thank you. All the vote, those in favor, those opposed. We need verbal votes. Thank you. And that's carried. And we're going to turn to,
Motion.
sorry,
The motion.
we need to put the motion now on the floor?
Yeah.
I thought we reconsidered it. So back to the same motion to go out to procurement, moved by Whitehead, second by Marula.
Just to clarify, it's section B of Councillor Nan's original motion.
Correct.
Councillor Clark has a comment.
Councillor Clark, go ahead.
So can I ask our staff, what's the cost to do the procurement? Since we're not supposed to spend any taxpayer money.
Jason Thorne, what is this going to cost us to go to our procurement process?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there's staffing costs involved in the procurement process, but I would suggest we would handle it in-house. So I don't think we'd be incurring any external costs for procurement. I don't know if Mike's still on the line and is aware of something that I'm not thinking of, but typically we would do the procurements in-house.
Yes, Clark.
So that would be like an RFP process, Mr. Thorne?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd want to check a couple of options with procurement, whether it's a full RFP, whether it's a request for expressions of interest. There's a couple of options I'd want to explore. So I'm not sure precisely which one. I think the key being that it was noted as a competitive process, so it would have to be something that was open. But I'd have to consult with procurement on the best approach.
Ms. Clark?
I can't help but make this passing comment that we just voted on this and it was defeated. And now because different people are moving it, we're moving forward with it. And I just find this very unseemly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, you were waving frantically.
Yeah, because it's this characterization of cost, we would have to, this contract was ending in February of next year, 6 months, or just over 6 months. So we would have to go out to procurement anyway. So there's no additional cost because that's the one cost that we have incorporated in this program. Secondly, Mr. Mayor, the fullness of the motion that was put forward was defeated. The one salvageable piece in that motion is the piece that we're salvaging now. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the vote on that. I don't see any further comments, or do I? Councillor Wilson. Yep. Councillor Nan. Councillor Wilson.
So in summary, we voted down Ward 1, 2, and 3 money to buy us some time to negotiate. That was defeated. Now there's a motion to go out to procurement to run the very same program that we were seeking to try and engage and enter into during that immediately thereafter that we had just defeated. Is that what I'm hearing? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Who are you asking?
I guess I will have to ask the mover.
Okay. Councillor Whitehead, is that the
No, because
direction of the motion?
No, because in the motion that was being put forward, there was three critical pieces that were complete in conflict of the standing practice of this council. One, that area rating money, tax levied dollars can only go to capital, cannot go to operating. So that's number one. That's a standing policy of City Council, and that motion was asking for that to be changed for this case. The second one is sole sourcing. Sole sourcing we use very rarely in emergency situations and is very frowned upon. And sole sourcing is another longstanding issue with the council that we don't support. In fact, we just had a number of councilors on this that voted against sole sourcing on a recent development in Waterdown. And the third piece is the long-standing policy on this program is that not any operating dollars or bike share will come out from the city. So those are three standing positions, and the first part of that motion caught all three standing practices and positions of council.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, no, I'm just making notes here, Mr. Mayor, for myself to guide my decision making going forward. So what I've heard tonight and what I guess is going to guide this procurement or whatever is public services have to make money. So we're looking for return on investment, and I trust we'll apply that to our roads. This took us by surprise, and we don't have the money for it. But it's interesting that we found Lancaster Arts project that went from $12 million to over $20 million. We found the money for that. We use federal gas tax money for that. We use general levy money for that all of us are going to pay for, our constituents. Most of them are not going to go into that center. But for cycling, all of a sudden, we're not going to consider it part of our public transportation system. We're going to insist that it not cost us a dime. And we're going to go out to the market on that basis again. I am deeply, deeply confounded by this and the notion that we're going to go into a period of austerity and do the same thing we're always going to do. I would submit to you that we were in a fiscal crisis before COVID, and it's exactly because of the capital decisions that have been made by this council and the council prior to that and the council prior to that. We've mortgaged our future on capital projects that are never going to pay back. They're never going to make money. And that's why we are in a fiscal crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Net.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess similarly just confounded by the position we're in right now. That just a replay that this council is okay with denying 26,000 subscribers safe mobility during a health pandemic. I am obligated on behalf of the residents that I represent in Ward 3 who use SOBI, who rely on SOBI at this time and in times prior, and will continue to rely on SOBI moving forward, to vote in favor of anything that will continue SOBI. But it is an absolutely sad moment for our council today that during a pandemic, we have taken away a safe mobility option for thousands of Hamiltonians in a pandemic, when what we're supposed to be doing is leading and providing safe opportunities for people to physically distance and move around the city in the way that they need to get the essential services that they need to get to and from work. And we've just taken that away from 26,000 subscribers. I hope everybody sleeps well tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Mr. Mayor.
Can we wrap up at some point?
Yeah, it's sad that there's no recognition that that stadium we talk about, we can fill out about 6 times with people that are currently using their own bikes in this community, and many of them are actually using it to access work or recreation. So when you want to compare numbers, that you take your 26, I'll raise you 200,000. That's the reality. So let's not play with numbers.
We've been playing with numbers all night. Councillor Marula.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify what's happening right now because there seems to be confusion. So what occurred was there was always unanimous support to try to save SOBI, but where the contention lied was who was going to pay for it. So obviously 8 councillors felt that the city of Hamilton should not pay for it, that it should be a private entity. So we chose to go down the road of putting them away for a period of time in order for us to put a plan together to go out and find that answer. If it weren't for Councillor Farr, and I guess it's because of the late hour, we would have ended this meeting without any action forward, right? On exactly what our intent was. What we should have done was, and I apologize for not capturing it earlier or catching it, but even Councillor Nan's motion, we should have separated it. So we should have, in essence, someone should have said, can we take item A and B, whatever, and separate the two, and this part of her motion would have passed. So that, and I apologize for that because we should have caught that. There was nothing unseemly, nothing planned. Had Councillor Farr not mentioned it, we would have all left here tonight without actually, and we would have had to do it at the next meeting. So thank you, Councillor Farr. You should be given credit for catching this, but we should also acknowledge that really it is Councillor Nan's motion, and the only reason that happens that it's happening the way it is now is exactly what I just said, because Jason caught it, and now we're changing it. But there was nothing designed in any way, so I take offense to the unseemly reference. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think at this point we need to just get on with getting on. So on the motion itself, all those in favor, those opposed, let's get this vote done and let's get this meeting finished. Just for fun. Anyone need to indicate through thumbs? Councillor Wilson? Councillor Farr? Favor? Thumbs up. Councillor Farr? Councillor Wilson? Gotcha. Thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. That's 14 to 1, I think. Just so you know, I'm the one. I don't know why, it just does. Thank you. Let's move on to Councillor Collins, please. A motion, not a motion on the bills. We have to finish committee of the whole, do we not? No, are we done? Are we at the bills? Okay, Councillor Collins, a motion on the bills, please.
That move
Councillor
on,
Partridge.
seconded by Councillor Marula, that the May 27, 2020 bills be passed, the corporate seal be affixed thereto and signed by the mayor and city clerk.
Thank you. Councillor Partridge on the bills.
No, not on the bills. If you could come back to me before we end the meeting, I have a request, please.
Okay, that's not really on our agenda, but you want to make that request now?
Yeah, I would just like someone to walk me out to my car at City Hall, preferably security or
I will.
somebody.
I think Chad's right next to you there. I
Oh,
think
thanks, Chad. Okay, appreciate it.
I'd be happy to do it as well. Councillor Whitehead?
I asked the question earlier because on the chat, I sent 3 emails out and never got one response. So I'm not.
Okay, let's sort that out tomorrow, Councillor. We'll get them on it to find out exactly why that isn't being responded to, and we'll get it sorted out for you tomorrow.
Appreciate it
Fair
because
enough. Thank
should
you.
get response our staff when we're asking a simple question. Thank you.
We're apparently there's something in the process that's not quite working right for you or either in the process. So we'll sort it out. On the motion on the bylaws, all in favor? Electronic vote. Any opposed? Councillor Nan, in favor? Thank you. I got a nodding of the head and a thumb up. Anyone else? All right. Thank you all very much. To adjourn, moved by lots of waves. Partridge, second by Pearson. All in favor? Hands up, carried. Do we need an electronic vote on that? No. God, no. We're done. Thank you all very much. See you tomorrow or sometime soon. Today.